Jack it up. Jack it up. Jack it up. Jack it up.
Just saying, you know how it is when you get a phone call. And I told you who the phone call was. Jack it up. Good morning, everybody. Morning, our Pledge of Allegiance will be said by crime analyst Jimmy Maddox. Jimmy joined the department as an analyst at Shoal Creek in 2020 in March, and she transferred to the robbery unit in 2023 and has served as their crime analyst ever since. So Demi, welcome.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'd like you to remain standing for Chaplain John Jones to do the invocation.
May we bow our heads in honor of our Heavenly Father. Gracious Heavenly Father, He who resides above this world, who created the universe and everything that is in this universe. Father, we give you honor and we give you thanks. We thank you for this assembly, the Lord, today of this meeting. And just we pray for every leader to whom you have put in position. Lord, never let them forget why they serve. Let them always remember in their hearts that it was you who have handpicked them to be the leaders of this great city. And that through their leadership and through their integrity, that they will lead this city and they will be the perfect example. Let the decisions that they make today, Lord, be within your will. And never forget that they are servants of the people. We thank you, Lord, for these leaders. And now, Lord, be with them as they proceed in these meetings. And Lord, may they lead with integrity. For it is in your precious name that we pray and ask these blessings. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. I would just like to say on August 28th, we lost a prominent business leader in our community, loving husband and father of two, Sean Brady. This was a tragic event that should have never happened, and we are grieving for his family and offer our prayers and condolences to them and the Irish community, which plays such a big part in this. We are sorry for your loss. Now more than ever as a community, it's important that we come together to work on resolving these issues. I spoke to at the last board meeting on how we're seeing a trend in juveniles that are committing property crimes and how we need to start holding their actions accountable because this is escalating. Our chief had made a meeting with our juvenile court 2 days prior to this incident to see what we could do to make a difference with getting help for these juveniles before this kind of thing happens. Now the question is, how do we recover from this tragedy? As a community, we need to focus our attention on being a safer community and all working together to make it a safer community and the greatest community it is. I have been a part of this board and department for 3 years now, and I would like to say this is the best board and department I have ever worked with and the most caring people. And we will work together to come up with solutions. And I just want you to know that we do care and we do fight to make this a safer place for all. Now I would like to have the mayor designate.
Madam Chair, we were going to change up things a bit this week and have the city manager, this month rather, have the city manager join us. He wanted to have the opportunity to visit with a few more department directors and city council for his update, so we'll defer that conversation, if you allow, until next month.
Okay, thank you. Okay, general discussion from our chief.
Hi, I'd like to call up Ms. Christine Lentz from our Police Athletic League Board, who's a co-president. The Police Athletic League of Kansas City has made a tremendous impact on the lives of youth, offering them mentorship, support, and essential resources to help them thrive. This work would not be possible without the dedicated leadership of the PAL board members, whose ongoing efforts have fostered an environment where young people can interact with police officers in a positive and meaningful way. One individual in particular has gone above and beyond in her service to the PAL Center. Christine Lentz, the co-president of the PAL board, has been a tireless advocate for the kids we serve. Her passion and commitment are reflected not only in her 12 years of service, but also in her incredible ability to raise funds necessary to sustain and grow our programs. Under her leadership, the board has raised $2 million since 2020, exceeding all expectations. Christine's dedication doesn't stop when the workday ends. She consistently checks in with PAL staff, offering her time, resources, and expertise whenever needed. Whether it's through her company, First Service Residential, or through her personal connections, Christine has always found a way to ensure the needs of our youth are met. Today, it is my distinct privilege to present the ceremony of baton to Christine Lentz. Her commitment, compassion, and unwavering support have made a lasting difference in the lives of many, and we are incredibly fortunate to have her as a part of the Police Athletic League family. Christine, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for.
Christina, on behalf of the board, thank you so much. We so appreciate you and all your hard work.
Madam Chair, if I just may briefly, I got to know Christine over these last several years, and for any of us who have been in These areas, there has been lots of stress in them, but I've appreciated every time that you had the chance to visit with either city council or the community. You reminded us of the kids. You cut through any types of debates about anything else going on in the world, and you invested in our young people. And relating to what the chair opened with and so much more, you really are an incredible difference maker. And so we mean very sincerely, thank you. And thank you on behalf of everyone at City Hall across the street and the hundreds, if not thousands, of kids that you have touched in connection with PAL and all the efforts you've made. We appreciate you.
I appreciate the board letting me take time to recognize someone who's doing so much and assisting the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department in reaching our youth. Usually Deputy Chief Maben reports on how many visits we have each month to PAL, and it's in the thousands. So that's just one way. Again, we are trying to connect with our youth. So throughout my career in law enforcement, and I've heard this recently, I've heard, what are the police doing about crime? And as a chief of police, I sought to answer that question in a written KCPD crime plan and blog. I'm not going to belabor that, and of course, all of the efforts that go on here in the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department cannot be quantified in one written document. But the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is continually looking for ways to have a greater impact on reducing crime and improving the quality of life for those we serve. I just want to bring your attention to right now. Recent disorder, property crime, and acts of violence are at the top of mind for Kansas Cityans. KCPD has responded, making numerous arrests, sometimes within minutes to hours after the offense, and a lot of that is because of the help that the community also provides us in solving some of these cases quickly. We have served search warrants, recovered evidence and firearms, and we've submitted probable cause statements to our prosecutors and courts. We have increased patrols and visibility to prevent further criminal activity. We have added additional officers to areas experiencing increase in criminal activity, often staffed by officers working in addition to their regular shifts. We are here, we are working, we are being proactive. We're working within the 3 pillars of prevention, intervention, and enforcement to make our city safer. Enforcement action is an expected part of an officer's job. Police offer the first consequence, the arrest of a person for a criminal offense. This service is needed to make our city safer. We took an oath to serve, and we're owning up to that service. We're making arrests, and we will continue to do so. In fact, this Sunday, East Patrol has been able to open up our detention services to expand space for arrests as staffing allows, to better provide officers the ability to deliver first consequence for arrests. With that said, I do want to bring to your attention a little bit of the frustration for our officers that are out here doing the physical job of making arrests, oftentimes at their own personal risks. Sometimes we are arresting the same individuals. This is a topic that we've been discussing. But when you talk about consequences in our city, they too are frustrated with some of the lack of consequences. And I'll get to talk about how we are actually working on that. Kansas City's not alone in this frustration. It's a nationwide problem. But even so, we're not focusing on what we can't do. We are working on what we can do, what actions we can take as police to ensure we offer the needed first consequence. Right now, Kansas Cityans need to hear leaders in our city, to include me, put an emphasis on consequences for those who cause harm. Consequences that include juveniles who are committing violent crimes, armed with guns. Also, a city detention facility. Thankfully, a new municipal rehabilitation and detention center is being planned at City Hall. In my experience, this is the closest we've come to a city jail since the Kansas City Municipal Corrections Institution closed years ago, and I'm thankful to the mayor, to the city council, who began work on it last fall, and the need for consequences at the city level is critical. And I just do want to take this time out. You have, the city council has continued moving this forward, and I appreciate that. And that's because the consequences at the city level are critical. The consequences at city level offenses may course correct those who may have continued down the wrong path, keeping them from escalating and committing more serious offenses. The The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is working with all of our stakeholders and local leaders in making our city safer. We are taking a citywide approach to crime and disorder because this is what it requires to make sustainable change in public safety in our city. Lastly, we've been asking a lot from our members, requiring and requesting they work extra shifts in areas seeing an increase in crime and disorder. We put pressure on our officers, detectives, and professional staff to ensure we are achieving the needed results and making areas of our city safer faster. They have responded. They have shown up, and I'm thankful for the work that they do. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the members of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department that work well under pressure, and they respond with a service mentality, and they get it done. There's still work to be done, but they are out here doing it. And I'm thankful for it, and I know the city, the people of our city are too. So I just wanted to bring a couple of those things to light to let the board know that we as a department, we're working with other city leaders in different areas, and we're working on solutions and moving forward to make our city safer.
Thank you, Chief. And any questions? I just want to sincerely thank you, though. We know you've been working overtime and really hard on everything, and we appreciate all of the department's efforts and hard work on this. So thank you so much.
I may have a few questions, and Chief, I appreciate the comments. For background from others, I had the chance to probably spend about 90 minutes yesterday afternoon with the chief, which the day before a board meeting is certainly appreciated. I want to make sure that you know and understand that all of us, I think, share the same viewpoint, and by all of us, I mean all of us elected officials across the street, our respective prosecutors. We often only talk about one, but we have 3 other county prosecutors that we work with. We have a city prosecutor, a United States attorney, and others, all of whom often will pick up the phone, make sure they're part of these conversations. And I think we are all trying to row in the same direction, sometimes, however, in very choppy waters, but we'll get there together. And I share your commendation of our officers. I think, you know, I don't get to do ride-alongs enough. The other board members are doing more lately, so I need to get back out there. They do cool stuff, but every time I have the chance to be part of those, I get a chance to see, I think, the hard work that our folks are doing. A few questions I have, and I imagine the public comment may speak to this. I think what we hear from the public more than anything is urgency, and you understand that, right? A violation, whether a property crime, a physical assault, anything under the sun, is incredibly important and urgent and impactful for them. What is your recommendation for community members, whether in a neighborhood or otherwise, who may say, we've seen a lot of break-in activity in, name your neighborhood, Prospect Avenue, the Crossroads, Waldo, what have you, and we would like more attention? How do they get started on that? What is it that you have to share with them, recognizing that no one wants to necessarily, and we get this at City Hall too, hear about staffing necessarily. Nobody wants to hear about any of the other challenges they face.
Right. And that's part of my words this morning, is talking about what we can do. And also as police offering the first consequence, should there be some kind of a criminal violation, and that would be with an arrest. But I know that you're talking about something different. When you're talking about people that are living in an area that is experiencing an increase in crime, disorder, maybe quality of life issues, sometimes the best way is to reach out to one of our community interaction officers at the station to find the nearest police station, maybe the station that is either in that area where the crime is occurring or where that disorder is occurring, and contact someone at the station. Ask for the desk sergeant, ask for the community interaction officer. There will be someone that will be responsive at those division stations. And whether or not, if that's not that person that works there as a desk sergeant, they're going to refer you to somebody and get you connected to get involved either with us or other stakeholders in the community that are out here doing the work.
And then can you speak, and I don't want to get ahead of everything that's happening in this meeting today, so I'll check our agenda. You and I had a chance to talk a little bit about property crimes, and I'm not sure we have shared broadly with the public a lot of the work that's being done. Could you just elaborate a bit on the work that has been, I know it's a lot, but the work that's being done, how we're looking to address some of those issues?
Yes, actually, I'm actually glad you asked that question, because Deputy Chief Niemeyer is going to have our property crimes come up and present a whole presentation.
Got it. So I'll hold on that. And then for now, Madam Chair, I know we'll get into a bunch of other stuff, so I won't go too far at this part of it. Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, Chief, anything else? Okay. And now Investigations Bureau, Deputy Chief Niemeyer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Mayor. And on cue, this is our, we're gonna, as you can see, we're gonna start right off the bat today. My information is under tab A, but you can follow along with the slideshow. But I have Major Kobanaw and Captain Schreiber here this morning. They were here last month as well, and to address any concerns that citizens want to have one-on-one. I will tell you, they put together a PowerPoint slide today to address all property crimes throughout the city. And once their presentation is over, they will still be available if anyone is here that wants to talk to them individually outside. We make them available, and they're available every day. But I will turn it over to Major Kobanaw.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Major Martin Kobanaw. I have with me Captain Schreiber of Property Crimes, and I'm going to present on property crimes throughout the city. As you can see, our property crimes unit is spread throughout the city through center, east, metro, north, south, Shoal Creek, and also includes economic crimes. The property crimes unit, what do we investigate? We investigate a lot. As you can see from the screen, everything from burglary, auto theft, property damage, shoplifting, and sometimes, depending on what's happening in the city, we will get those things that don't fall within any of the specialty investigative elements. The detectives have to be well-rounded and have to understand that victims are the priority, and to get the information from them, talk to our witnesses, so that we can do a better job of investigating and finding out who committed whatever the crimes were. We also have a detective assigned to the Cyber Crimes Task Force. He works with the FBI, and he travels a lot, does a lot of the cyber crimes investigations, and he does a pretty good job doing that. Our property crimes and the investigations of pattern crimes, this is where we get the biggest bang for our bucks through our detectives. Individuals committing singular crimes, while we do search those individuals out, we also seek out the individuals who are out there prolifically committing crimes against the community. We submit those cases to the respective prosecutors' offices to make sure that the appropriate charges are sought out. Those crimes go from everything from stolen autos, individuals, groups, burglary patterns, property damage crimes, and especially during the holiday seasons when you're talking about package thefts from your front doors, from your businesses, and then pattern shopliftings where there's huge losses from our business areas. Some of the investigations that we have conducted here recently, as you can see, we've had significant arrests with regards to the DCJ investigations, and that's our Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep investigations, where there were high-end vehicles that were stolen by individuals. We have some of those individuals that were apprehended and arrested and charged. We had an economic crime. And I think this may have been talked about by our KCPD media folks, where an elderly lady who had $1.6 million in gold bars that was taken from her. That investigation was done in coordination with the FBI and outside agency in Colorado. But as you can see, we do a lot of work. There were the Kia Hyundai stolen autos. We have a lot of those that are, as everybody knows, those vehicles are very easy to steal. Our detectives did a lot of work on those, and there are still individuals who we are still actively seeking out who are responsible for a lot of these thefts. One investigation I'd like to speak of specifically is the 5400 block of Brighton, which was a cleanup job that we did in coordination with the city. Our detectives received complaints. They went out, investigated, and at the end of that investigation, we cleaned up a huge area in Metro Patrol Division. The video that you see in the upper left-hand corner, this is what the area looked like before. There were stolen autos, stolen property in this area. And as a result of the complaint, we focused on this area. The city owned some of the property. Some of the property was private property with a shared easeway or entryway. And on the right-hand side, the top photo is what happened after the investigation was done. Through the help of the city, through our detectives, other investigative elements, we cleaned up this area. The businesses and the neighbors in that area were extremely thankful for the results. The picture at the bottom, you see the young man, he's a 14-year-old autistic young man, had his bicycle stolen. And as a result of the community's help and input, we were able to locate the suspect. Unfortunately, he's not been charged yet, but we were able to retrieve his electric bike. Once again, that's through cooperation through the community and talking to us and helping us, and the detectives and police officers doing good police work, knowing the people in their area, and able to recover this bike and get it back to him. Continuing on with some of our significant investigations, recently we had a $450,000 loss from a fulfillment center. As a result of that investigation, we have individuals identified, and we are continuing to seek more information with regards to that investigation, or the investigation, those individuals, to seek charges on those individuals. We had a package theft investigation where, you have to pardon me on this, I have no idea what a transcranial electrical stimulator is, but the individual who had it needed it for their livelihood. And as a result of Crime Stoppers tips and the suspect's father, basically community involvement, we were able to solve this, find that piece of medical equipment, and get it back to that individual. That's the dedication that our detectives have with trying to make sure that people get their property back to them, especially life-saving equipments. And we already talked about the electric bike theft that occurred in Shoal Creek Patrol Division. Like I said, that individual has been identified and charges are still pending. And now when we're talking about property crimes, whether it's trending up or down, right now property crime is trending down by 3%. As you can see, we have burglary, property crimes, stealing, theft from autos, stealing from buildings, shoplifting, stolen auto, fraud, and forgery. Those are the big items that we have on the board today. Right now we are up in property damage, stealing, shoplifting, and stolen autos. And those stolen autos are primarily our Kias, Hyundais, and our high-end thefts of Dodge, Chryslers, and Jeeps. Property crimes, our part of the enforcement piece. Our part is working with many of the different investigative elements within KCPD, special operations, special investigations, working with neighborhoods, neighboring law enforcement agencies who are experiencing some of the same issues that we are experiencing here. Working with our federal partners. Should the cases that we investigate reach a certain level, we engage those individuals to help us bring these individuals to justice. We also believe that part of our enforcement activities is to submit our cases to the respective prosecutors' offices, receiving arrest warrants, and then going out and seeking these individuals out and arresting them and bringing them in front of the courts. That concludes my presentation. Board, do you have any questions of me?
Questions?
Madam Chair, if I may, how do we tend to address national trends? I preface it this way. Actually, at this board meeting, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was a question about Kia and Hyundai thefts. And I think whomever was responding at the time said, we're seeing an uptick. I don't think any of us in the country knew just how dramatic it would be and the threat to almost every vehicle. But is there communication with other agencies and departments on what to be on the lookout for, and how do we try to at least get ahead to the extent it's even possible?
There's communication with other agencies, both state, local, and federal. There's also our primary tool and something that the board and the department has worked hard with is to make sure that our analysts are well-trained to be able to scour the internet, talk to their partners in other agencies to see what they're experiencing and compare it to what we're experiencing. Nationwide, yes, as a result of a YouTube video and individuals instructing others how to steal Kias and Hyundais, it exploded. Kansas City was no different. Depending on what numbers you look at, Kansas City was far and above after 2 years in Kia and Hyundai thefts. Our job is to respond to that in kind. If they're going to continue to steal, our job is to find those individuals, arrest them, and make sure that they are charged accordingly.
I will say that just in this past month, our property crime detectives took it upon themselves. They acquired 1,800 clubs for cars to pass out. As a preventative measure, you have this vehicle, we're gonna give this to you so your car doesn't get stolen. So, that's an example a lot of people probably didn't know, to be preventative. That's a significant number of 1,800.
Can we go back? It was an early slide on staffing. And Major, I'll never put you in the firing line, but maybe Chief or Deputy Chief. How far down on that staffing are we from where you would want to be fully staffed, if at all?
Again, as you said at the beginning, staffing is not an excuse. I listened actually to Carl Oakman yesterday. He goes, and I like Carl a lot. And he goes, I get paid to figure this out. So, of course we would like to have more detectives, but as I will tell you, and I told the chief this morning, 10% of my entire bureau is, when I say 10%, my bureau covers all of violent crime, all of property crime, and all of SID, special investigations division, and all that. So when it comes to property crime, that is 10% of my entire bureau that's dedicated to that right now. So once staffing comes up, I work with Deputy Chief Maben. In January, we added, I think right off the bat, we added 5, 6 detectives. We added a detective to each station at the time, and added a few more actually to Metro to up that number. That number is up from where it was in January. So we've added detectives since January. But of course, I'd like to have more. I think we would all like to have more. I think we've been discussing that. We've been discussing that for a few years, and I'm actually going to address some of that at the end of my presentation about staffing and where it's at on the department. So, I always say this, and I think Major Kolb and I talk about it a lot because we're at the point in our career, everybody here is the best recruiter, to include yourself. You can be the best recruiter for our department. Myself, everybody that's sitting at this table. I wish one of my children would have been the police. They chose other careers, but we want anyone who wants to be a police officer to apply, and that's how we're going to get our numbers back is to promote this department and everyone in the city to promote this department to become a police officer, because it's easy to say, hey, I want change, but be part of the change. Help us be part of the change. That's why everybody up here joined. Almost every time I see a new policeman, why do you want to be a policeman? I want to help people. Help your city. That's what we all came here to do. So, of course, I'd like to have more people, and I hope we do get more people.
Can I ask about the role of, and Major Kopenau mentioned analysts, and I know I talk about HARSIFL all the time, although I always forget the acronym, but for those watching the Heart of America Regional CFL. And, I know we have a lot of good people there that work with your division, some of whom law enforcement, as I understand, some of whom not uniform, but still folks who are very helpful. Maybe talk about how they can be helpful. That always seems to me like an interesting area, or maybe we can recruit folks who, for whatever reason, may not want to become a police officer, but love to help us solve crimes or break down cell phones or scour TikTok for crime information. Can you share how those folks are doing that, how many we have? Can we hire 200 of them tomorrow? I mean, kind of just give us some detail there.
Sure. We have hired several. I think we gave a presentation either last month, the month before, with the the funding that came, actually it went to committee. There was funding that came through the Police Foundation to the city, to the police department, where we hired the crime analysts for the violent crimes, so that they're specifically, we have crime analysts with each one of the homicide squads. We have the young lady that did the Pledge of Allegiance, she's with robbery. We have, each division station has a crime analyst assigned to each division station. Those crime analysts work with their captains at their station, the major at their station. They present to us at the chief's teams meeting every every Wednesday morning. So each station has their own crime analyst to work with the officers and command staff and property crimes at every station. What I like to say is you just added kind of the force multiplier to your detectives. I'll resort back to the homicide unit. When a homicide squad gets called in on a violent crime, their analyst gets called in with them. They can immediately go and begin working on the things that we're going to talk about at the end of this presentation, do a real-time crime center of, they can start working on cars, license plates, pictures, phones, all these things that started to happen immediately. You know, back in the day, we didn't have that. You would have to submit your phone and you get the results back a month later. We have an analyst that starts on that right away now. And I think you really see the difference. The chief already made mention of this. A lot of times crimes or people are being in custody sooner after that crime is committed due to the fact that we have these additional resources that we didn't always have. And we have those now, and it's helpful. They're professional staff. Yesterday we hired another analyst. So I don't have the exact number that we have, but it's been crucial. Just in this past year, it's a big change for our department to go that direction.
How do we get more analysts? I mean, I like, you noted there's an analyst aligned with every patrol division. There are analysts in certain areas of the department. How do we find more, get more? Is that something that, from a board level, you want us pushing every smart person out there who wants to be an analyst, we got space for you too? I mean, kind of how do we enhance that area?
I think that's probably a bigger discussion at a time where we just hired several and see how this kind of works see how this is going to work out. We don't really have a lot of data yet on how this is going to work out for the ones that we just hired, and moved into the positions that we have. So I would say this is where the future of policing is going. I agree with you, Mayor, that we're going to need to hire more in the future. We have a sergeant and a captain that's over our analyst, and we've kept it that way so that they can all be trained the same. They all have the same information. They have the same, we keep them under a unit, but even though they're dispersed across the department, we keep them in one unit so that, and it's my understanding, Doug Niemeyer's understanding, it's kind of a small community, the analyst community, but they also know the analysts at other departments, so they have resources that they can talk to outside of just KCPD. As Major Kobanal was talking about, a lot of property crime suspects are committing the same thing on the Kansas side. So our analysts communicate that way as well. So I think there's more to come. I think we've talked a lot about analysts in the last few board meetings. Just like I've been talking about property crime since January. Each board meeting, we've had some update on a property crime. We talked about that major cleanup. That was a huge part of what the city helped us on that. We were out there for 2 or 3 days. Yeah, 2 or 3 days to clean up that property. That's the one I told you we had, I think it was 30 some odd stolen vehicles. We had over 100 stolen license plate on that property. I mean, it was a property crimes mecca right there. That everybody that came in to clean that up. All parts of our city departments helped with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a follow-up question. So Deputy Chief, Major, are we noticing obviously a cycle in the same individuals doing this? You mentioned the same folks are doing it in Kansas, they're doing it in Missouri. What kind of conversations are we having with the prosecutors, kind of the other side of the fence, to get these people off the street who are perpetually involved in property crime? And if you could speak to that.
We are continually, whenever we do notice a repeat offender, a prolific offender, somebody that we definitely go to the prosecutor and identify them. We may not have all the cases ready to be presented at that time, but we are communicating with the prosecution, letting them know that there are more cases to follow. They're involved in more than just this one case. Where, let's say shoplifting, because that's kind of a big pattern crime. merchandise, that's a lot bigger deal. So we are always in communication with the prosecution, letting them know what we have, what we're seeing behind the scenes that we haven't been able to present yet, so that they can make a better decision, informed decision wherever they make their choices as well.
So just a comment, and I know we're setting up conversations, but I, for one, would be very interested in just understanding. I know we do a phenomenal job of apprehending, and we've got our analysts, but there's another component to this equation regarding just the court systems and understanding how do our fine people apprehend, arrest, investigate, and then they go to the court system, and then maybe they're not detained. I don't understand that, and I know we've had conversation on having maybe meetings to understand that process. So I just share that as a concern, and that you are correct, Deputy Chief. You've had multiple presentations on property crime, and you just have to wonder, are these the same individuals, different individuals? Is it different for a Kia versus the high-end vehicles? Is that more of a ring? Just
For juveniles, JJC has a matrix that they use.
Can you use the microphone, please?
JJC has a matrix that they use to determine which juveniles are held. Now, understand that the JJC prosecutors are not the deciding factor when it comes to holding them. It's in coordination with the JJC prosecutors and the commissioner. Depending on what's going on, yes, they also talk to their partners over in Kansas to determine if this individual has committed offenses on both sides of the state line. And sometimes that information can be used to determine whether or not that individual is going to be held. So just like we talk to Kansas, they talk to Kansas as well to determine how prolific or how dangerous a juvenile is. And I believe the adult courts do the same thing.
Thank you, Major.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I might just ask, a few on Commissioner Romeus's line of inquiry. And this is something where we just need the pure numbers, but it would be interesting to see how many cases are we submitting? What ends up getting charged? Kind of like we see, I think, on our non-fatal shootings and homicides. And I know we get a total number, but if we could break that out on property crimes, it'd be interesting.
I'd be happy to do that. I don't have them right here in front of me today, but I'll be happy to do that and get it to you.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Okay. All right, moving on to the blue sheet. Ooh. And, again, Major Kobanaw and Captain Schreiber, I want to say this before they walk out. They'll be out in the hallway if anybody wants to ask them a specific question about anything. I just want to make sure that the public knows that they'll be available. So far in 2024, we've had 110 homicides. That is in comparison to 138 at this same time in 2023. In 2024, we have cleared 53 of those homicides, 19 homicides from previous years, for a total of 72 cases. That makes for a 65% of homicides that have been cleared. On a side note, I would like the board to know we have, a lot of times I've been asked this question about the blue sheet and cases at the prosecutor's office. I, myself, and Major Kobanaw work closely with the prosecutor's office on that, and I think you're starting to see that number come down of cases that are at the prosecutor's office. And in the near future, I have spoken to Gene Peters Baker personally multiple times now, and I look forward to seeing that number continue to drop that are waiting a decision, and I'm confident it will. In August, we had 18 homicide victims. 12 of the 18 cases, we have identified a suspect. 7 of those are cleared by arrest. 5 of those are solved but have not been cleared by arrest yet. 6 are still open and under investigation. Breaking down the August homicides by division, Center Patrol had 5, Metro had 6, East Patrol had 5, North Patrol had 1, South Patrol had 1, and Shoal Creek Division had 0. So far, as of today, September, we have had a total of 5 homicides. Our non-fatal shooting comparison report is from January 1 to September the 5th, we have had 430 non-fatal shooting victims. In 2023, we had 349 victims at that exact same time. We are up 23% compared to last year. In August, we had 51 non-fatal shooting victims as compared to 49 at the same month last year, for a 4% increase. Now, again, reminds you of the things that have happened earlier this year, and that number has steadily been in the 20% area since about February or March, and has sustained there. I believe this is the slide you were speaking of, Mr. Mayor, and I will get you those numbers in a different format. But during the month of August, we submitted, this is the total cases that all of Investigations Bureau submits from all my divisions. We submitted 359 total cases, 297 to Jackson County, 30 to Clay, 32 to Platte, and 0 to Cass County. And then next month, I'll get you a better breakdown to be able to present. Can we go back one slide? Or go to the next slide to go to, and then we'll come back. Do we have Demont? So before we go to that, I'm gonna have Sergeant Collins step up. He's from the Real-Time Crime Center last month. I always try to build on what we did the month before so we can have an understanding and going through things. We talked about the Fusion Center. Sergeant Collins he's located in the same building with the Fusion Center, but he's with the Real-Time Crime Center, and I'd like for him to present so that you have the opportunity, if you go to the Fusion Center, you can also go see him tomorrow.
Good morning. I'm Sergeant Demont Collins. I've been with the police department for about 19 years, and I've been at the Real-Time Crime Center for about 6. The Real-Time Crime Center was started in 2012. We had some members of the police department go to existing Real-Time Crime Centers in different locations that already had them going. They came up with some best practices and brought it back here. Our mission is providing accurate and quality information in a timely manner to meet the tactical, strategic, and administrative needs of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, which is a lot of words to say. We do our best to utilize existing resources to support the members on patrol and investigations. What's the next slide? How do we accomplish our mission? Basically, we listen to the calls for service. Every member, there's currently 6 folks that are assigned there along with me. We listen to the air. We also monitor our computer-aided dispatch system, and we're able to triage calls so we can support the communications folks as they are going through the calls for service before they're dispatched. So we have the opportunity to see the calls before they're even going. You can go. I want to be concise. So the most important thing that we are able to do in seeing the calls before they come up is we can start to get some background information, so we're better able to send officers with the information that they need. We have the ability through the dispatch consoles to communicate directly with the field, or we can also add call notes into the calls for service. Just an example of what we would see, some of the calls. Then we utilize available resources like the Genetec camera system. We have access to over 8,000 camera feeds. They're through different federations with city entities, Public Works, the Parks and Recreation Division. We also have private entities like the World War I Museum, Union Station, that we allow us to utilize their feeds, so we're able to see what's happening. When we see things, we try to relay that to the officers that are responding so that we can help them get there in the safest way possible. This is just an example of some of the resources that we have access to. We also do KC Scout, and we can even see stuff on the Kansas side. We also use automatic license plate readers, ALPRs, which basically takes a picture of the vehicle. It takes a picture of the license plate, and it timestamps it and gives you a location, so it helps us to locate vehicles in real time. These are some of the ALPR systems that we use. We try to use whatever we have available to us in an effort to do our best to support the members. We also will do data mining. So the thing that we're going to be looking for is violent crime. So like if there's a call for service that involves an outside disturbance or a weapons call, we will try to prioritize that so that we can make sure that officers are getting there in a safe manner. A lot of the things that happen with street racers, we will be able to see how many cars are there so we can give the officers background information. A lot of times the vehicles will be aligned in a way that there's not really a safe way for ingress or egress, so we do our best to notify the officers not only of which will be the best way to approach, but also if there are people that are armed or other hazards that they should be worried about. We use open source databases to kind of do background information, so if there's a disturbance that comes up, a lot of times there will be issues where it's just someone that calls. We have maybe a name, but they have called before. So we're able to use our niche system, which is our reporting system. We can look up previous calls for service that may have come from those numbers or from that person, and we can give the officers information in case there's something in the background that would be helpful to them. That's like a basic overview of what we do. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Madam President, maybe just a couple of follow-ups. Would you go back one slide for me? And at the top of that bullet list is the ShotSpotter gunshot detection system. And I think we're going to have discussion on this maybe later today because that contract is up for renewal. We had a lot of analysis, I believe, last year in this meeting. Tell me a little bit about, is that still a value? Are you using it just a little bit more on that topic?
Absolutely. So by virtue of my position, I'm the site administrator for ShotSpotter. It's the auditory gunshot detection system, which basically, once a gunshot is fired in that area, it triangulates where the gunshot took place. It gives us feedback, and we get information in less than a minute on where the shots took place and how many shots took place. It also gives us information as far as if it's automatic gunfire, which is also going to be very helpful for the responding officers. As far as if I find it to be valuable, of course, anything that gives us the opportunity to recover shell casings that we might be able to use for future investigations is going to be helpful. But it also helps us to locate things very accurately, so officers know exactly where to go. And what we have found is that a lot of times we won't get calls for service for outdoor gunfire, but with ShotSpotter we always do, at least in that area.
Yeah, just to clarify that last statement. So if you get a call that shots are being fired, you are responding?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is a priority one call, and as soon as officers are available, they are going.
But to further follow up, if I may, if you don't get a call, because you said often when shots are fired, there's no call for service, but the ShotSpotter has gone off, do we respond to that, or?
Any ShotSpotter call is going to initiate a call for service in our CAD system, and then officers will be dispatched on that call. So whether or not there's a citizen that calls, the ShotSpotter system basically does it for us.
So on any given Friday, Saturday night, you are having, how many responses would you say off the top of your head? Just
It's tough to give you an average of calls for service from ShotSpotter, but it is, I would say it's significant. But I will make sure to get those numbers for you to know exactly what it is, if that's something that you're looking for.
And I do have a question too, as far as the, alerts and letting us know. I have heard that a lot of members sometimes in the community don't report it just because of the fact that they hear them a lot, or they think perhaps somebody else has, so it helps us get there first. Are we finding that that is the case most of the time now?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have the statistics off of the top of my head, but Kansas City is basically 300 plus square miles, and the ShotSpotter area that we have currently is about 3.2 square miles. So in that ShotSpotter area, we get almost as many calls for service for the rest of the city. that's where the majority of our calls for service for outdoor gunfire come from.
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
Maybe just one follow-up, not on this topic, but on another one. You mentioned that the collaboration you have with private businesses and their security systems. What do I say to other businesses that I talk to about how they could work with KCPD if they've got a security system?
Well, we're always looking to partner with folks. So if there is someone that has a business that has security cameras or something that they would like to do a federation with, they can always get a hold of us at rtcc@kcpd.org.
All you, your unit, yeah, okay.
We'll do what we can to
That's the answer
figure
I'm
out the best way to do it. As far as it's gone so far, we usually do community improvement districts and things of that nature, so there's more cameras, but neighborhood districts, I mean, we are willing to work with anyone that we can.
Do you have analysts in your division?
In my section, no, but
so-
we work very closely. So just to kind of back up a little bit, the Real-Time Crime Center is part of the Law Enforcement Resource Center, and we are aligned with the Perpetrator Information Center, which is the majority of the analysts. So we work very closely together.
It is only uniform officers in your section.
That's correct, sir.
And a question about how you work with other agencies. And there was talk about that collaboration before on other issues. Are your cameras connected with other public agencies' cameras as well? So in Kansas City, that would include our universities, Federal Reserve, lots of others. Is almost everybody part of this system?
We don't currently have federations with the entities that you've mentioned. Most of the things that we have access to are city cameras and resources that are available through the city, but we do have some private entities as well.
Is there an impediment perhaps for that, or is that just a function of UMKC? We've never been able to work out something with them.
It's a very good question. I don't know that I have the answer for it, but as far as impediments for us, we are doing everything that we can in order to partner with other folks. So if folks are willing to partner with us, then we'll do what we can to make it happen.
And then this one's going to sound off the wall, although it's sneaking up more and more, but I'm thinking of artificial intelligence and other things that allow us to actually scrub data more quickly and efficiently that may take a lot of, human time. Have we looked at, ShotSpotter seems to do some of that already, right? It's entering a call into CAD and dispatching someone later, all of that. For everything else, do we have any systems that are looking through our 8,000 cameras? Because of course the challenge is, right now, are we set up that there are 8,000 cameras, but we've got 6 people looking at them?
So the systems that you're talking about can be somewhat cost prohibitive. Sure. We are looking into utilizing systems. We do have some systems that are currently in place that kind of align with that function. But as far as what's happening now, it's not happening on the level that I think that you are speaking to.
What I might ask is, to the extent you all find these types of systems, do let us know. We get asked for expensive stuff all the time. So, I'd welcome at least some conversation on how we get this. A lot of the property crimes discussion of late has been, right, we're seeing people in the same areas doing consistent things. If there is some sort of camera imagery that gets us a faster ding somewhere, notification, I don't know, maybe that makes a difference, but it could be worthwhile for us. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry my presentation's gone a little long, but we have a lot of information this month. But this last slide that I want to show you before I finish up came up yesterday. This information came to me just this past week, and yesterday I had the opportunity to present to the KC Crime Commission meeting and discuss this a little bit, so I want to make sure that the board was aware of it as well. Just this past month, our interdiction squad interdicted 43 pounds of ketamine. Ketamine's now being used to cut other narcotics, methamphetamines, fentanyl, other things. The scary part about ketamine is it's resistant to Narcan. So that's somebody has ketamine and a drug that they overdosed in Narcan, it's not going to be effective. So I'm bringing, we were just made, this month I was made aware of that, or the last couple of weeks, I kind of presented that. I will get more information, but I thought it's important to say that out loud. And I really want to thank Chief Oakman from yesterday. We talked about this earlier in the year about overdoses, the overdose call out that we do now on our police department. We worked closely with him on that. And we've really started working closely, not just on the overdose situation, but for those of you who have been to shoot review, you always see that KCK has a detective here. We send a detective over to KCK. A lot of times Major Kirchhoff is in KCK's or other folks. So it was nice to run into Carl yesterday at the Crime Commissioners meeting. We had other discussions about other things that we could collaborate on. Some of the things you just talked about, Mayor, was like our camera systems. That was actually a discussion that we had yesterday at the Crime Commission. So thank you to Carl. Thank you for letting me get this information. I said it yesterday. I just wanted the board to hear about it as well. Last thing is tomorrow is 9/11. I just want to say something about that. It's an important day to me personally. I was on the police department. I think everybody that's on this here was on the police department when that happened. If you look at our staffing levels, and we can talk about staffing levels, not my bureau anymore, but I found it curious. We break our staffing levels down to 0 to 5 years, or 0 to 5 years, then 6 years to 10, on how we have our departments deployed percentage-wise, meaning how many people did we hire during this range, all the way up to 30 to 35 years or 25 years and above. And I looked at it this morning, and 18.5% of our department have been on this department for 20 to 24 years. It was right when 9/11 happened. That was the biggest hiring time of our department. 9/11 happens, and people want to be the police. People want to be the fire department. Our second largest group that we have right now is 25 years and up. It's 12%. That means 30.5% of our department, about 30% of our department, either joined this department because of 9/11 or was on our department during 9/11. I just found that interesting to myself, that during that time of our country that people came and wanted to serve. Not in New York. They wanted to come here and serve the citizens of our city. And I think that you'll find that around the country, that you have a lot of people that signed up to be first responders because of what happened on 9/11. And I remember it vividly. I try to bring it up every year because I talk about them a lot. I have adult children. Allison was 2 years old, and Brooke hadn't even been born yet. And now she's in pharmacy school, for goodness sakes. She didn't even know what 9/11 was. But we talk about it a lot. I just thought it was important to say that there's a lot of people in this police department that signed up because of 9/11. So thank you to those folks. With that, I will conclude my presentation, say thank you, and any questions for me?
Madam Chair, every now and then, since Deputy Chief Niemeyer and I have been doing this for a few years, I ask him about trends in the world. I don't know if you can answer or not, but just trying to get an understanding from your 3 decades of law enforcement experience. The first relating to homicides and non-fatal shootings. We have a pretty substantial decline in homicides. However, non-fatal shootings, even if you were to remove the 24 persons or so shot on February 14th, we still have a decent size increase. Any rationale for the difference? Are we seeing more mass shooting incidents, thus fewer targeted victims? Is there something that explains why our non-fatal shootings are still up materially, whereas homicides are down rather materially as well?
I think if you look and you bring it up, mass shootings, so we had several at the parade, right? We had several at Crown Center. We've had several, an incident that happened on Prospect. When we have shootings, we have several people who are hit. The difference, and and Joe might chime in, or Deputy Chief Maben might chime in with me on this, is our officers responding to scenes and there's 93 shell casings There's not 7. You know, we've had incidents where you have 93 shell casings. That means 93 bullets are flying through the air in a large group. There's gonna be people that get hit. So I look at those numbers, I talk about them, and I've been talking about them all year, that there's just a large groups of people, large amount of shell casings means a lot of bullets. That's just me speaking. It's unfortunate. They're all, you know, I always said this, and, you know, one victim's too many victims, and I believe that. So how do we make that stop? You know, we continue to discuss it. We continue to take guns off the street that don't belong. That's my answer to why I believe non-fatal shootings are up, is these 5, 6, 7 incidents where we have multiple 7, 10 victims at these different times. So you take those 5 or 6 major incidents, take those out, and we're probably back to, even which is still way too many. That is way too many victims to be having shooting victims in our city. But when we always talk numbers and we always talk percentages, we always talk data, that's where it comes from.
Maybe for next time, I won't spend everybody's time on this. Something that I think this department, working with the ATF and others, did, particularly after our February 14th shooting, was going after some of the folks who were conducting unlawful transfers of firearms that got into the hands of our fairly young offenders on the shooting on February 14. I'd just be interested in an update or a discussion on how we're doing there on some of those gun-related offenses, what's filing like. I know our federal partners do a lot with that, but I'd be interested in that.
We are part of that, and just so you know, that got highlighted because of the incident, but that happens every day.
Every day.
That's going on. That's never stopped.
It's good. That's good to know. Separately, I'll always toot this horn, which is that we have ordinances. We try to clean up our ordinances, some of which relate to gun possession offenses. That being said, we try to make sure that we're fully aligned with Missouri law and understanding preemption. We continue to try to make those available for law enforcement so that you all have tools either to get guns off the streets or hopefully in some situations the offenders who are carrying those guns. And I would love for us to have further discussion on how we can use those in more situations, both for arrests, seizure of weapons where there's been some criminal offense and others. I'm not prepared for it today either, but would love conversation on that. Thank you.
Well, and along those lines of what the mayor said, I would love to see, of those percentages of the mass shootings, how many of them are involving our juveniles versus not, just so we have an overall percentage of what that looks like.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Patrol Bureau, Deputy Chief Maben.
Good morning.
Morning.
My information is under tab B in your books, or you can follow along on your screens. I'll briefly go over notable events, then response times, then the traffic report, and then Captain Abby Martinez is going to provide an update on our World Cup planning for 2026. So, Major Copeland already stole my thunder on this one, but Shoal Creek Patrol Division officers and detectives were able to recover this individual's bike and return it to him, and they will be presenting charges in the very near future. Central Patrol Division. Officers responded to assist a Kansas City Fire crew who observed a shooting in the 400 block of East Armour. When officers arrived on scene, KCFD was rendering aid, doing chest compressions on a victim. A witness pointed officers in the direction that a suspect had fled on foot and conducted an area canvass. They located the suspect in an alley and were able to take him into custody and recovered a firearm from his person. The victim ultimately died of his injuries. The suspect was charged with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and unlawful use of a weapon. So they responded immediately, were able to take a suspect into custody, did an excellent job. Police Athletic League, I always report the numbers for the month. We had a total of 831 visits during the reporting period. The daily average number of visits was 60. They also had 23 new enrollments. The month began with PAL taking 10 kids from their boxing team on a trip to Florida to visit Tampa's PAL program. This 5-day trip included many firsts for some of the kids. First time on a plane, visiting the beach, riding in a boat, enjoying a fine dining experience, staying in a hotel, and so much more. I would like to personally thank Christine and the PAL board for raising funds to pay for this entire trip. PAL has also resumed their tutoring program since the school year started. The program is offered 3 times a week and begins with the student assessment in the areas of math and reading to help tutors better provide the appropriate skill level instruction. Crisis Intervention Team. They conducted 40 hours of basic CIT training for the Academy recruits during the reporting period. During this, they emphasized de-escalation and communication strategies. They also provided training to an area school district security team on how to respond to individuals with mental health issues and also to educate them about additional resources available. K-9 section responded to 64 calls for service and had 29 deployments. K-9 techs conducted an article search and located a backpack containing 2 guns and crack cocaine. K-9 Rocco assisted CPD officers with a drug sniff on a vehicle and located 4.4 grams of meth. K-9 Rocks had a successful deployment where he apprehended a felon in possession of a firearm who also had a robbery warrant. And then K-9's Carlo, Mac, Tex, and Rocco all assisted with an article search during a homicide. Moving on to response times. The median response time during the month of August for priority 1 calls was 8 minutes and 34 seconds. This is a 2-second increase compared to July. And the median response time for priority 2 calls was approximately 11 minutes and 6 seconds. That's a 19-second decrease compared to July. From January 1 to August 31st, there were a total of 11,681 crashes citywide. This is about a 6% decrease from the same period last year. There were 6 fatal crashes during the month of August that resulted in a total of 8 deaths. From January 1 to August 31, there have been 56 fatal crashes with a total of 63 deaths, a 4% increase in the number of fatal accidents, and a 5% increase in the number of deaths compared to the same period last year. As we have discussed previously, one of the tactics we use to try to reduce traffic fatalities is to conduct enforcement. And if you look at department-wide traffic enforcement, we issued a total of 5,369 tickets during August and 40,204 tickets from the beginning of the year through the end of August. That's almost a 12% increase over the same time last year. We also conducted a sideshow enforcement operation on August 11th. The weather didn't really cooperate that day. It rained most of the night. However, we still conducted 18 vehicle stops, issued 7 citations for sideshow spectators, and 13 citations for other violations. 9 vehicles eluded, and 3 of those were able to be stop-sticked. We also had another sideshow enforcement operation this past Sunday, and I'll include those results in next month's report. However, that was much more effective than the previous one. That concludes the traffic portion. Now we'll have a presentation on our preparations for World Cup 2026 by Captain Abby Martinez.
Good morning, board. Thank you for letting me present today. I am Abby Martinez. I am currently the event and special projects coordinator, so I am taking the lead on all things FIFA for our department. And just a brief overview of what we're doing to prepare and the kind of the details for what to expect in Kansas City in 2026. So Kansas City was awarded not only a host city, but also 6 matches in Kansas City. All of those will take place at the GEHA field at Arrowhead Stadium. We have 4 that are in the group stage, a knockout group stage match, and a quarterfinal. So we won't know what teams we're getting here in Kansas City to play those matches until late 2025. They do a very public draw, and Kansas City starts out with Group J, so that's what we'll be looking for when we watch that draw to see what teams will be playing here first. So that could, change what we see in Kansas City pretty drastically. If we get one of those top teams in Kansas City playing here, it could be even more exciting. So we have plans here at the stadium that we're drawing out and working with FIFA very closely to do. But we also have much more than just the matches. We have the Fan Fest that was very publicly announced a couple weeks ago at the National World War I Museum and Memorial, so that will be in the South Lawn there, and the activation of that could be up to include the entire tournament. So we're still working with KC 2026 to see how many days that will be open and how best to secure that. But if you think of like the NFL draft in that area, or any type of fan activation, that's very much what that will look like. So that is staffing intensive, just like the stadium. Then of course we have all the entertainment venues. So any place with a screen and alcohol is going to be big in 2026. There's lots of opportunity for businesses to make a lot of money in 2026, but that also comes with very staffing heavy resources and equipment and planning resources for the police department to make those safe and secure events for all of our visitors. All the traffic escorts that come along with FIFA. So we have the teams, the players, the officials, VIPs. They're traveling throughout this region to the matches, to their training fields, hotels, airports. That's all done by a collaboration with our department and certainly other departments around. The fan marches is something that's kind of unique to soccer fandom. We don't see that a lot, with NFL fans, for example, but for soccer, that is very much a thing that happens. If you think of just like a street takeover. In European countries, this is a march from city center to the stadium. I don't know what that will look like here in Kansas City, but we're planning for those type of street takeovers. The base camps, regionally, we have 3 here in our area. There's a hotel and a training field paired together for those base camps. And there's one hotel that's downtown Kansas City paired with the Riverside location of the current practice facility. There's a hotel in Overland Park that's paired with the Sporting KC practice facility where they will practice. And then in Lawrence, a hotel in the Lawrence field there at KU. So those base camps are where it will be a home away from home for teams. And we won't know who those will be because they will make those selections after they find out where they're going to play their matches. And that's after that draw in late 2025. And then, of course, with the largest sporting event in history comes national and international visitors to Kansas City and puts us on an international spotlight. So security and safety is utmost importance to us and probably not something that's thought about in all the details from everybody, but we want to make sure that no one has to think about it, that it just all goes smoothly, that they have a great experience here in Kansas City, and that we're keeping everyone safe. So the planning that's gone along with that is we've approached it very much from our regional planning mind, because it's not just Kansas City proper that this is occurring in, and certainly not just Kansas City officers that will be able to handle this type of activity in Kansas City. So we are working regionally with Mark, setting up those planning committees. Every law enforcement, first responder, agencies have been invited to those meetings, and we're working with our local, state, and federal partners, definitely with our state partners on mutual aid coordination. As you can imagine, it's going to take hundreds into the thousands of officers to safely secure all of these different events throughout June and July of 2026. So it's a monumental task that we're excited about, but may keep me up at night as well. And then certainly we are communicating with FIFA and KC 2026 as the details come out. And, you know, we know how to plan for NFL games, and we know how to plan for Fan Fest with football fans, but the soccer fans are a unique crew. So we are learning from FIFA, we're learning from experiences that FIFA provides. I was able to go to Germany with FIFA and experience a soccer tournament firsthand with them, and see, you know, firsthand how that fandom occurs at the games and what we need to watch out for. And then, you know, just full time, kind of, we've been doing this awareness to Kansas City on what to expect, and the crowds and the intensity of the fans. And then, you know, an important piece to me is the internal reviews of what we're doing. It touches every aspect of KCPD. Every unit is going to be affected by FIFA being in town, and on our planning for that. So it's important to me that we hear from the people that it's going to affect, and that we're doing everything that we can, you know, during our planning and during just everything that will affect our staff, that we're doing it. So, you know, we're doing it the best ways. And it's really going to affect days off and all that kind of stuff. So we're just trying to figure out best practices on how to treat our members correctly and throughout all of that. This is a super high level introduction to our planning here, but I certainly would make my schedule free for anybody who wants details on that security planning. We want to assure you that we're on top of it and moving forward with all of it. So, any questions for me today?
When you have conventions here in our city, and this is a summer event, what kind of feedback are you getting from those organizations once they leave relative to crime that could have occurred that you could learn from that? Crime's a pretty broad, just curious, because that's specific to us, and these are smaller conventions, 2 or 3 nights, in no way, shape, or form like what we're going to experience. But I'm wondering, are you getting any feedback that you can then take that information and?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think this is just my estimation, is that it's those quality of life crimes that we're concerned about with our visitors. So, you know, certainly violent crime is on the mind, but it is more of those property crimes, those quality of life as they walk through downtown, and make sure that they're safe and secure. So we have been meeting with each, you know, either already meeting or on the books to meet with each one of our units of those investigations, with each one of our division stations, to figure out exactly what we need to either change or, you know, staff differently during these events. we've been, I'd say lucky, but, you know, we plan for those events, so not all of it's luck, that we have had great success with conventions, with people in town. The feedback that I get is that they love Kansas City, you know, and a lot of that is our planning for safety and security, that it has all gone well, and that they haven't seen the details that have come out from that.
If I may say to Commissioner Elder's question, we had a chance to test that with the United States Conference of Mayors meeting, which was in Kansas City in June of 2024. And I'm not blowing smoke, but this department did an exceptional job. You can understand some of the security challenges. You had probably about 300 mayors. You had other federal officials. Most federal officials, unless they're actually the cabinet secretary, don't come with a complement of security detail. So my concern was, I don't want the undersecretary of labor getting jumped walking down the street. The other thing that was interesting about a lot of these characters, and God love them for it, but they were always looking for the cigar lounge that was open the latest. They loved walking around all of our city, and that is something that I think this department and that event collaborated on very well. And so I have great confidence as we get an influx of thousands who will likely just want to show up here, may start walking from Westport to downtown or the River Market, or heaven forbid, the stadium. And by the way, I've run from 18th and Vine to the stadium before. People do it. You know, it's a thing where I think we were very well prepared. We even had protesters. I mean, there was actually a lot in that I found to be a very good test. Heard no incident. I heard of no real issues, certainly no violent crime incidents. I didn't even hear about any quality of life incidents, and so I think we know how to do it. To the captain's point, probably the biggest issue is just how do you scale up for that number of people, and recognizing the fact that all the areas you would think would be busy will be full, but also all the areas you may not think will be busy, you'll still have a lot of folks who are out-of-towners being there.
And for sure, that's one of our, you know, from you know, even now in our plans is not just those areas, the stadium, the Fan Fest, but having those roving patrols throughout downtown, throughout the entertainment venues, you know, staffing up for international visitors that may be driving here, that may be staying here, that, you know, are certainly going to have issues that require 911 here. So it's not just those venues that we're staffing, it is all of those other, you know, things that we expect.
Captain Martinez, I have a question, and it's basically in this theory. How do you balance being lead agency, but also not spending all of our money on, let's say, providing, and I get it, right? They pick locations in Kansas. I would have loved everything to be in Kansas City, Missouri, but that being said, is our department the agency that's supposed to help somebody who's landing at KCI Airport, then they're bringing the Brazilian team to Lawrence, Kansas, and then we have 15 or 20 or 30 officers that are part of that? I'm just trying to do Major Heinen's work now to make sure that, you know, either is there funding support, is our other departments just doing that and we're training them how to do that if they're taking a bunch of hotel visitors to Overland Park or Kansas City, Kansas. How do we plan that so our taxpayers aren't paying even more than the $15 million that the city council's already approved for the World Cup?
Yes, thank you. So it is definitely a combination of the two. Through that regional planning, we have, you know, made aware, if they don't know, that we don't have the staff to handle this on our own. So all of that mutual aid is being planned for now, and it is in the hundreds. And when we talk about those other municipalities that are involved, you know, they have a lot of the same training, but we are certainly working on all the coordination between those steps. So it's not just Kansas City handling every escort and everything. You know, we simply just cannot do that. So planning from the beginning for all of those partners.
Much like when we had the NFL draft, we're going to be asking outside agencies to come assist us more so than us going, you know, to Overland Park or such.
Maybe, can we follow up on that just for a second? So lots of agencies, lots of other cities will be involved. There's a Kansas City committee that is looking at not just the security, but the entire experience. Who's on point for security? Is it that committee? Is it KCPD? Who we're
I
not
would
gonna
say-
handle everything, but who's on point to coordinate?
So KC 2026 has a steering committee for security. I'm one of the members. It's 4 or 5 other members. But Abby is really doing the day-to-day. I mean, it's like her full-time job right now, doing some of the coordination, just because we have the biggest piece, obviously with FanFest and with Arrowhead. But it's probably, right now, there's 17 different committees. We're going to consolidate them maybe to 5 moving forward. But there's a lot of moving pieces as it relates to safety and security. But Abby is taking a big lead. But also, Mark has been, Mid-America Regional Council has been invaluable. And as we move forward, we'll have additional federal assistance, probably in coordination. So it's a team effort.
Kind of what I've learned, just from talking to people in other cities, the lead agencies, I didn't realize how good we had it here in Kansas City with our state and local, our local, state, and federal partnerships. I think I just took it for granted I've always been in Kansas City in law enforcement, but that's not the way it is other places, and I didn't know that. So a lot of this was already in place regionally and with our state and federal partners that they're just, even before I reached out, they were ready and willing to work with us. So that's been great.
Any other questions?
Can we, I have just patrol division questions, but perhaps you have more in your
Nope,
presentation.
I'm ready for any questions.
Wanted to ask you first, by the way, on 911 issues, should it be in your discussion, or will that be in Acting Deputy Chief Haley? Staffing. Your staffing and your response. I'll save it for Acting Deputy Chief Heinen. On traffic, just kind of detail for me. So we have a small increase on traffic-related deaths and other accidents. Are there particular areas where we're seeing an uptick, or is it kind of our usual on seat-belted drivers and high speeds and impairment issues?
Both, especially unseat-belted drivers. I believe it's 90% of the fatalities involved. The person who was killed should have been wearing a seatbelt or wasn't restrained appropriately. Obviously, speed is always an issue. It's a little lag time for us to determine toxicology sometimes, based off of labs. But those are issues that constantly cause fatality accidents or contributing factors.
On sideshows, for a bit of a shift, I saw the operation on Sunday. Asked this question earlier this morning, but I'll throw it to you right now. How do we typically address them? Do we always need a big operation? Have we seen that interventions? I've certainly seen situations where an intervention of one officer isn't enough and everybody just circles around our one patrol car. But kind of what's the balance? Because I recognize we probably can't always do a full operation on sideshows, but also recognize our residents are noting that every night in certain areas of the city, we're seeing them in consistent spots.
Right. So if we get a call for service or become aware of a sideshow activity, obviously district officers will go and try to address it, but usually that ends up just pushing the problem somewhere else. Now, with these big operations, they are labor intensive because we have, like Sergeant Collins with Real-Time Crime Center monitoring cameras to deploy resources. We have the helicopter 690 assisting. We have our tactical response team, because these are really more a public disturbance, civil disorder than just a traffic issue. And so when you have these large sideshow operations, we'll try to set up officers in all 4 directions so that when people scatter, as invariably they do, we can deploy stop sticks, we can try to get some tickets, try to hold people accountable. So yes, we can do smaller operations, but usually it's playing whack-a-mole, shoot people around. So
the direction for example, persons write us pretty consistently, Broadway Boulevard and Southwest Boulevard, you have pretty consistent sideshow activity. seemingly almost every summer weekend. There are other addresses like that that are kind of known for that activity. Southwest Boulevard near the state line, for example. Is the direction then people should just call 911, and then likely you'd get a regular district car intervention if there is not a planned operation for those?
Correct. That serves two purposes. One, you know, when we get a car out there, we'll try to address it to the extent that we can. But also, we'll look at the high calls for service locations for sideshows, and then we'll plan accordingly and we'll respond during our future operations. Now, also what we do is, you know, we have the environmental mitigation factors, and so, you know, we'll do the grooving, and that does seem to decrease the incidence of sideshow activity at those areas. But when you're talking about the boulevard, people kind of just hang out down there anyway, so that's a additional challenge.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, Administration Bureau, Acting Deputy Chief Haley.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. The Administration Bureau information is under tab C. As of August 31st, our law enforcement strength was 1,086 personnel. We also had 40 police officer candidates and 520 professional staff members. In the process for possible eligibility, we have 38. We have 16 pending candidates, and we have in terms of laterals and rehires, we have 21 in the process. New hires, looking at the communications unit, we had 4 new hires for the communications unit starting yesterday. We have 4. We currently have 4 members in the process. I'm sorry, we have 9 members in the process currently. I know, Mr. Mayor, you're probably like, hey, what do I mean by 9 members in the process? Glad you asked that question. So, to break it down for you, we have 5 members that are scheduled for testing and document turn-in. We have 3 applicants that are scheduled for the voice analysis, and we have 1 applicant that is in the background investigation. Generally, we can move these around of the voice analysis and background. Between those 2, we'll have the interview to see who will actually be joining the police department. If they accept.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair, just briefly, to make sure I understand all the steps, because that was a great question.
They're in order. Those are the steps in order. Great question.
What's the voice analysis?
So it listens to you'll speak and it'll analyze the voice, and it looks for different areas where the voice points will kind of go up, indicating possible deception. So you think about it in terms of like a polygraph is just with the voice.
Understood. And then the background, you mentioned 3 things. There's the voice analysis, there's the background investigation, which was your third. What was the first thing?
Document turn-in, and also there is a keystroke test.
The keystroke test is just kind of a classic, almost words per minute typing test?
Not exactly, but close. Okay. So call takers, they enter in data into the computer. They don't go into typing like full paragraphs, but just making sure that someone could do that.
We've had conversations about this at the board before, but perhaps on the voice analysis, if my goal is to hire as many people as possible, you don't want complete scoundrels and frauds necessarily as call takers, but do we need to be as extensive on voice analysis, or perhaps I'll ask it a different way. Give me the argument as to why I need to know about, I don't know, some of the past history of a call taker or dispatcher.
It goes to integrity. If you look at our communications unit, you can think back over the time that you've been the mayor, what major scandals have we had? It goes to integrity. We want to make sure that we're putting people with high integrity into these positions. Same way with law enforcement, sensitive positions, you have to have high integrity. That's essential to that essential component.
Understood. On background, what can ding, and maybe this gets to Major Heinen's area, what can negate someone's ability to become a dispatcher or a call taker? Whereas I would expect from officers, There's certain drug use disqualifiers, any number of things for a dispatcher or call taker. What types of standards do we lay out?
So if you look at background, we're probably following trust but verify. So if you said that you worked here, we're looking into that. If you said that you lived here, we're looking into that. If you left things out, we're going to question why. We're going back to the integrity. And so in the background, there could be multiple things that could come up, but we're just looking at the integrity. It just solidifies that what you've told us is accurate. Trust but verify. And that's what the background does.
Do we ask those persons about, say, past drug use, for example, or other such things?
Yes. Employment relationships, personal relationships, we go into detail because we have to have the right people sitting in that spot. I know that we may be short, but integrity is going to be the number one thing that we have to be worried about just to keep it our level of professionalism that's been demonstrated through the KCPD all these years. And so we're not dropping standards. It is what it is.
As you may know, the city has changed some of those standards, obviously with marijuana use, but in some other areas to address the very real staffing challenges. I respect the integrity point you've made, although I would stand up for the integrity of our 5,000 plus city employees as well, for the most part. I do think it might be worthwhile as we try to hire more and faster. And again, I don't want us to have scoundrels and folks that are stealing funds from the police department, although I would hope a dispatcher can't do that. But it might be worthwhile for us to evaluate what questions might curtail someone from wanting to sign up. If someone had used marijuana in, let's say, 3 years ago, I don't know if that's on your question or not, and maybe it is, but if it's not germane to the position, I might suggest that perhaps we don't actually need to ask the question. I know we want to check their honesty, but maybe that's something that we can evaluate long-term, just so I can get somebody who can answer 911 calls, but maybe enjoyed lawful marijuana at some point in Missouri.
Mayor? No, I can help.
I wouldn't be as worried about someone using marijuana 3 years ago.
Right.
I would be worried
Today,
about
yes.
someone not admitting to using marijuana 3 years ago. That's what we're looking at.
I understand. That being said, as someone who's done a few background checks over the years, one federal, it is fair, they ask certain questions for a reason, but don't ask other questions. Right? I might not have been as likely to try to get a job at the U.S. Attorney's Office if they said, tell me about every romantic relationship you've ever had in your life, just theoretically. I should answer honestly on it, and maybe I would, but I'm saying I'm trying to be an intern in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I ain't trying to be the president. And I think for us, perhaps, it is worthwhile to scale what questions we may find to be germane. Understanding honesty, that's why I come up with the example I did. But we may not just want 50 questions, 40 of which aren't relevant to the job, but all of which are ones that could get somebody to say, maybe this isn't for me. Just to.
Your point is taken.
May I follow up on this? And if we can just take a half a step back, big picture, where do you see the barrier? Is it in attracting applicants? Is it in that initial inquiry and the 3 processes you just described, or is it later on? Or
I think the
option
barrier,
D, all the above?
I think the barrier is that this is probably the toughest job on the police department. Think about it. You take this job, and I tell people when we do the interview process, I want you to think about it before you accept this, before you get in and something happens that you have a permanent memory. Any day, you can listen to someone, unfortunately, die on the telephone. Any day, when you come onto this position, you may have kids screaming in the background, someone's hurting mommy, someone's killing mommy, someone's beating mommy. This is happening. It's a lot to deal with mentally. And because of that stress, I believe that leads to a higher turnover. Even though we have a wellness unit and we're reaching out and we're doing things that we can, when you think about it, it's a high-stress job. And so I think that's where people, they think about it and they do sit-alongs and they may decide this isn't for them. Hopefully that answers their question.
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So who's, this may be Heinen, Cat, but you're recruiting, right?
Yes.
So you do help us find the people. On your recruiting for these folks, where are you usually finding them? And I know we've been through it before, but.
We're finding them all over. So this weekend, they had a recruiting event, a local community recruiting event. And for some reason, the communication unit was hot. We had 8 people that expressed interest. They're not reflected in the numbers because it would be disingenuous to put them in the numbers right now. However, they are seeds. Recruiters are going to reach out to them. We're going to water them and hopefully get them to apply and start the process.
Do we have connections with, I know Metropolitan Community Colleges has I believe, a program that trains dispatchers and call takers, something of that sort. I don't know all the details. The Mayor Pro Tem was actually talking to me about it the other day. Do we have those direct connections with potential vocational or other training programs?
Yes, we have, the recruiters are assigned to various universities, tech schools, recruiting area programs like that. So we do have those connections as well.
If I could, I think specifically Dr. Beatty from Metropolitan Community Colleges, we have met with her and some of her staff to discuss a potential training program, almost like a pipeline to the police department. But I think what the unique part of that position is the need to sit by someone who is actually answering the calls for service, hearing the calls come in, see the action that you're taking on all these specific, it's such an on-the-job training. But that has been discussed. I actually just saw her yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. And we talked about re-engaging that conversation, see if we can.
Because what you're saying is MCC has their own program, but this is, and I think the board's had this chat about officer training too, oddly enough with MCC, if I remember it, where the suggestion might be that PD needs its program because there are unique things that can't be replicated by the classroom environment, perhaps at the junior college.
I don't know if they have a program for dispatchers, but they were open to the possibility of and partnering with KCPD. As far as the police, I think they have that. I think that's out at Blue River.
Understood. Because you lay out something that, let's say in the medical profession happens all the time, which is that, right, a medical resident is at a hospital. They're at University Health or KU or something of that sort. They learn their things, they go off into the world with their training. It would be very interesting if we built something where MCC, I don't know, they do sit-alongs with us at KCPD. We are in essence the teaching hospital. Hopefully that means a lot of people stay with us. But regardless, you know, I'm sure we would welcome helping people train as long as, you know, the volume isn't too high. It's a creative conversation that I hope you continue with Dr. Beatty.
Yes, that was our connection yesterday.
Thank you.
Law enforcement testing dates. Upcoming testing dates, September 26th, October 19th, November 14th, December 11th. And for the September 26th class, it's still early. We already have over 45 people signed up for that test. So it's looking good, very good for September 26th.
Wow.
I think this is a good time to talk about data analysts and crime analysts, how we bring them into the police department. Recruiters, we go to multiple universities, and we have conversations with students about their interests with the police department. Depending on what they say, we might talk about a major, they identify themselves as a possible person that could be a data or crime analyst, we will send them to talk to our crime analysts here and hopefully try to make that connection. Whether we have a hire slip, whether we're hiring right now or not, we're still gonna foster that connection, let them see, hey, you can talk to someone and have a pathway for the future. We'll try to harvest that relationship. In addition to that, I think our best recruiters are gonna come from the data and crime analysts. Because they're in that community, they would be able to reach out and specifically get these people with these specialized skills. In addition to that, we have a national data person in the police department, Captain Jonas Bogman is a great resource as well. So that's how we would look at trying to move more data or crime analysts into the police department. Go back to that slide. Just a couple of places that we will be recruiting from. On the 14th, we'll be at Light of the World Church for their pop-up event. September 18th, Graceland University. September 19th, Arkansas University Career Fair. And September 25th, QC Career Expo and Graduate School Fair. Thank you. And we are hiring, in case I didn't put that in, for pretty much all positions. We want to have a conversation with you if you have an interest. This is a slide. I believe they were at Fort Riley, and they're recruiting as members are potentially leaving the military. We want to thank the Patrol Bureau. They did an excellent job of collaborating us with our recruiters to provide UMK students with hands-on demonstrations. That's what you're looking at in this slide. As a result of this experience, a few students expressed interest in pursuing a career in law enforcement. And sorry, parents, or shouldn't be sorry, some are thinking about changing their majors. You guys can have that conversations with your families later. So it was pretty successful. Whenever you think that, hey, this is my major, I see something that's interesting, maybe I should think about law enforcement. Very successful. Thank you, Patrol Bureau. And at this point, if there are any more questions from me, I'll entertain them now.
Any questions? I think you've answered them all. Thank you so much for doing a great job and for what you do and being out there. Okay, Executive Service Bureau, Acting Deputy Chief Heinen.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. All items for Executive Services Bureau are located under tab D of your board book. Budget transfer for fiscal year 24-25. I request police grants fund transfers to move $253,348 from personnel services and $6,719 from commodities in the amounts of $21,467 to contractual services and $238,600 to capital outlay. The police grants fund transfers adjust appropriations to where they are needed now compared to when they were estimated in the fall of 2023 as the budget was being put together. Unless you have any questions, I recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? say
Aye.
Motion's been approved.
Adjustment to special revenue account for fiscal year 24-25. The Special Services Fund transfer moves $3,301 from commodities to capital outlay. This transfer is necessary due to a required upgrade in the private officer licensing live scan system. Unless you have any questions, I recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I'll have just a question on that. I don't know if it needs a board policy adjustment, but what is in the chief's spending authority? Because I just, for the future, I don't know if we need to review $3,000 transfers.
125,000.
Anytime we do a budgetary transfer.
Oh, I understand. We're
we have
adjusting
to-
the budget.
Yeah,
But we should.
I know.
Go on. I'm in favor.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's been approved.
Sound Thinking Service Agreement Renewal. Sound Thinking Incorporated is a service provider for the ShotSpotter technology system. The annual renewal for this subscription is $209,326 and will run from October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. This technology has been used by the department since 2012. Unless you have any questions, I recommend approval for this renewal.
Move to approve.
Second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's been approved.
Security liability bond purchase. The Department of Labor requires the Board of Police Commissioners to maintain workers' compensation claims securities in order to cover potential liabilities. The Department of Labor concluded the most recent review of the Board of Police Commissioners' findings and determined the updated security holdings in the amount to be $3,760,000. Lockton Companies was consulted and was able to secure a bond at an annual cost of $37,150 via City of Kansas City contract. Unless you have any questions, I recommend approval for Lockton Companies securities bond totaling $3,760,000 with an annual rate of $37,150.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say
I do have a question. I mean, I guess I understand why structurally we're doing this. However, if we were at a certain point to exhaust all funding as a department, and I won't think of Chapter 84 issues, and I believe there are penalties if we do as much. That being said, if we were, isn't the city just our backstop?
Ultimately, yes.
So why are we paying money for the exercise of pretending that the city is not?
Because, I mean, it's consistent with a lot of the things that we do. You know, per Chapter 84, we try to get our amount, our budgeted funds from the city and manage it over here as we would as a state-run agency. And it's really no different as per the state statute, any self-insured agency has to maintain this bond, which is what we are. And due to the significant increase, then it's something that we're going to have to maintain over here. And it's cheaper to do the annual rate versus put money into an account and just let it sit there, totaling that $3 million.
And the basis, so I appreciate the answer, may still have thoughts on it, but nonetheless appreciate it. The basis for the substantial increase, are we seeing a higher volume of workers' compensation claims? And are they paying out more as well, or is it just kind of a volume issue?
It's both. Yeah, we have seen an increased volume. This is something that has progressively increased since 2020, 2021. And then we have began working with a third-party administrator for that as well. And some of them have been being paid out at a different rate. And the state had not done this evaluation for quite some time. So we had money set up originally, but the state had not done an evaluation for quite some time. So when they did do the evaluation this time, it increased significantly. And we figured the best course of action to go for our current budget state is to do it through a bond that is consistent with the way the city does it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, just to confirm, the option is we have to provide security per the regulations or through the code, any self-insured work comp plan. And the bond is a much lower rate than if we were to put in a letter of credit where we have to actually come up and encumber cash for that.
Correct. We either have to have an account holdings that total $3,760,000 that then just sits there in order to cover work comp claims should we need it, or we can take out a bond and pay an annual rate. And we were piggybacking off of the city's bond, able to obtain a very good rate.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's been approved.
Shoal Creek Unite Fiber. In coordination with the City of Kansas City Office of Emergency Management, it has been determined necessary to replace the leased network's secure circuit line with Unite Fiber. The Office of Emergency Management recently reached out to the department and offered to complete the Unite Fiber secure network at a split cost. This mutually beneficial offer will provide a more secure network, more secure, cost-effective network to both the police department and the City of Kansas City, Missouri. The total project cost is $355,488, which will be split. The department's agreed cost sharing is in the amount of $177,744. If there are no additional questions, I recommend approval.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Second.
I will be abstaining.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's been approved.
Traffic Services Grant Awards. The Missouri Department of Transportation Highway Safety and Traffic Division recently awarded the department 6 grant contracts, which provide for personnel costs, training, and equipment to assist in increasing compliance with traffic laws and reduce fatality accidents through traffic enforcement. These 6 contracts combined total the awarded amount of $787,419.68 in federal funding, with a local match of $115,615. The award period is from October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. If there are no additional questions, I recommend acceptance of the 6 awards.
I move approval.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that completes my board items, pending questions if there are any.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I think on call taking, I'm trying to make sure I separate what we had with Acting Deputy Chief Haley versus your side of things. So you're talking the recruiting side, well, Major Haley was talking recruiting side, you're talking staff?
It's in large part the management of the operations, yeah. So
Understood.
Administrative Bureau does all of the recruiting, the testing to get people in the door. And as far as managing the daily operations, that's Major Williams' position within the Bureau.
Well, I always like hearing from Major Williams, by the way. He does great work. Come on up.
Yeah, I brought him here for that reason.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you. You know, one question I think that we might have is what has changed perhaps since we last visited? As you know, we've been talking about this at the board, then Board President Mark Tolbert and others over some years. There is legislation at City Council now that looks for adjustments and interventions, but is there anything that you believe we should know about positive changes that are addressing this, I think, crisis?
With regard to staffing, correct? So
Yes.
let's do just a quick history. I'll keep it short. I looked at numbers from January of 2020 to January of 24. Our, well, let me take a step back. Hiring from 2020 to 24, we did 8 in 2020, 9 in 24, and these were new call takers. 36 in 21, dropped down to 9, and then last year I believe it was 26. This year we're at 14. If you go back and look at the attrition for them, and I specifically looked at training. So if we went from January 2020 to January 24, we were at a 16% rate of success with our training.
Say that again?
You heard me right, 16% success rate with training. I came in January of 23. From January of 23 to January of 24, we went to a 4% success rate. I should have done something quicker. Took me a little bit longer than necessary, but in January of 24, we totally revamped our training model. From January of 24 to today, we're above 90%. So, yes, we did have some struggles with staffing, hiring, there's a magnitude, but in the end, I think that's probably the greatest cause, and we've addressed that. I was hoping to get in the 60 and 70% range of success, but we've seen to 90. I don't see that changing unless something significant happens. There's nothing really to affect that if we keep the things going like we are and moving in that direction. So for us, currently we hired 4 yesterday. We're at 25 short. That's the lowest it's been in 2 years. Normally we fluctuate anywhere from 30 to 35 is what the number has been. We're at 25. I'm hoping in the next 6 months we'll be in the high to low teens if if HR continues with what they're being provided to us, which has been 4 to 5 every 3 months or so. And I can do a training class now every 5 weeks. That will put, if we do that many, it does put some other issues on trying to get them trained fast enough. But given our rate right now, we are looking at, in the next 12 to 18 months, we should be easily fully staffed unless something with hiring changes or there's some other outside hiring freeze or something to that nature, if that makes sense. So yes, we've been talking about this for a while. Looking straight at the numbers, in the last 8 months, we've made some significant changes, which we should see a return on investment in the next year to 18 months.
Just to go back, although I love being forward-looking, but how did we get to those very low numbers? Is that because I want to make sure we avoid it in the future, is that a failure of one person, several persons? With respect to whomever was involved, did we miss something? Can one bad apple destroy 911 answers in the city, or is there something different?
I could give you my personal opinion, but I think it's a combination. It depends. Like I said, in 2020, we had a greatly successful hiring. I happen to be in employment, so I know a little bit about it. We stopped hiring police officers, so the focus was able to be partially was detention, communications, and at that point, in I think January or March of 21, by the numbers, we were fully staffed for 1 week in communications. Then we didn't capitalize on that, and the training was taking. They said to get everybody trained at that point, it was going to be 3 to 4 years. The major told me. And I was like, now I kind of understand being there, what had happened and what they were saying. we've kind of got out of that culture, and it's been hard, but we've made it through. I will tell you, communication staff, what they do is unbelievable. I mean, seeing what they have to deal with daily, I couldn't do it. And I'm a major for the police department. I couldn't go in there and do what they do. So I applaud them. And this was for us working through it, and with their help, hopefully we've kind of went over that hill. Now it's a time issue. If you could find me 30 people tomorrow, that would be great. And I know HR is working on that as we speak. They have it at the top of their list, and they've been tremendous with what they've been providing. So I think we've hired 14 year to date. If we can get another 8 to 10 by the end of the year, and we keep our 90%, that will put us in the low teens by the end of the year.
What types of changes have you made on the management level to ensure that we always have a closer watch on cultural issues on that staff? I'm sitting in this position some years ago, I believe it was Deputy Chief True, who was talking about things they were trying to do at the time to get people to like working in communications. With respect to everybody's there, I don't know if it worked. What types of things are we doing now to try to make sure that we don't lose sight of some of those needs?
So one of the biggest complaints when I first came was the turnover in management. And the chief is, I think I've probably been the longest tenured major, and I've only been there a year and 8 months now, 9 months. Prior, a year was probably the average, maybe some would be a little bit past. So that cycle. So right now we've had the major, the captain, and both captains have been there. I've been the longest, but they've been there both past a year. So in the past, I think that wasn't necessarily the case, and that caused some issues because it took me, like I said, it took me a year to kind of get a grasp, and now hopefully we're seeing some of the returns. And that wasn't solely on me. I mean, that's my whole staff. But I think that's been a tremendous help, and I think I've talked with the chief, and I think everyone agrees. Looking forward on how we keep that consistency there is extremely important. And there's a number of things I think we're working on towards that end.
And this is just from lack of understanding. Where does the civilian management end, and where does a kind of a uniformed officer come in? You're a major over that division. Kind of what does the structure look like from there?
So my equal counterpart would be a director, and then a captain's counterpart would be a manager. Currently in communications, we have 2 captains and a major, and then I also have 2 other units, fleet and radio. And we've had talks about civilianizing all my positions within my unit, which the chief has already done with fleet. We've done that. Just given the nature of what we're working through, that's still, I think, something we'd like to get to, but we're going step by step.
The plan and the path is, however, to have something that is, if not the same as fleet, reflective of fleet, where we have seen civilianizing in certain areas to the extent possible on the communication side. Is that fair?
I wouldn't be the one really to ask. I wouldn't be against it, but I think the chief's direction.
I mean, that's been a focus since I've come into this position, to look at some of those positions that could be filled by professional staff that are filled by law enforcement. In communications, we have had professional staff managers in some of those positions. I think we had a retirement this year. I think Hoskins was here, 30 some odd years, and I don't know if we've replaced that. We are continuously looking at the structure of communications to ensure that we are having a really good look at the measurables, and especially with the training and in ensuring that we are first getting it staffed.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that.
And I do have a recommendation, something I'm working on to this effect, but I haven't really shared it, so I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment that far, but we are always looking at civilianizing any aspect, especially in these units.
We had discussion before about, now we have the auto attendant. Is that what calls people back right now, or is that?
The automated abandoned callback.
Understood.
The auto attendant is the phone
The other
tree.
form, yeah. And our concerns with auto attendant before, which if I recall is you call 911, they say, thank you for calling 911, press 1 for fire, police, what have you. Can you give us again, what were the primary concerns? I don't want to speak for you, but I know when we discussed, it seemed as if language barriers and others were issues raised.
Yeah, well, actually, I gave a presentation to the board in May. I don't think you were able to make that one. So I went back, grabbed my notes. If you want, I'll just speak to that,
Yeah.
what I said during that meeting. So with regard to the audio attendant, we talked to subject matter experts, including APCO, which is the Association for Public Safety Communications, NENA, which is the National Emergency Number Association, and Motorola, who is our vendor for not our radio system, but they do the Vesta through Mark, which actually does the 911 calls. Motorola throughout the nation accounts for, they're probably the largest in this space. They have over 1,000 call centers. Not one call center in the United States uses that system for emergency calls. It's both organizations say it's bad business practice for a number of reasons. What our concern is, and even with fire, I've talked with them, is that we'll probably create, fire can't, the police department handles all 911 calls coming in. We triage everything. We're like the answering service for 911. If we took what we send to fire directly, they could not handle that currently with their staffing. They would have to beef up staffing. For instance, you get a call from an accident. You might get 5 or 10 calls from an accident because everybody now on the cell phone is calling about the accident. Right now, we triage all those. Fire gets 1 call. Some of those will hang up. Prior to the abandoned callback, we would physically have to call those back. Last year, we called back 116,000 calls for hang-ups. With the auto attendant, it does it automatically now, so that number has been greatly reduced that we've had to call back. But that's the worry, is staffing at that point. We're going to create more issues. And then you're going to create, now you get 10 calls to fire. Those 10 calls can't get through, so they're going to hang up on fire, create an abandoned call. They're going to call back police, hold again. So we think it wouldn't work good for 911, given the staffing levels. And if we fix staffing, then we don't need the auto attendant. It's kind of a double-edged sword here. So that's the primary concern for that. Now, we have discussed and we're looking into using it for our administrative lines because we get 400, 500,000 calls a year administratively, and we think there's a benefit there. In fact, we're working with Mark right now. I have some switchboard operators that do a non-emergency, well, actually the admin line that comes in. We're going to shift them to answer non-emergency calls also, which should kind of help. So we're looking at technology and then other changes within our structure to kind of help with these calls.
I appreciate that. I might say, and as you all know, I'm in a unique position as commissioners. I absolutely do love our fire department. That being said, we can't let them have an excuse that they can't hire when we're facing, in some ways, the same challenge. Is there something that makes us feel that the police are better disposed to solve the staffing challenge than the fire department, or?
Because I personally believe if we do this now, it would increase our hold times, which is not what we want to do. We want to do the complete opposite, given the staffing. Now, fire ramps up staffing, but I think they said over the course of 5 years, just to handle what we're talking about here would be in excess of $12 million. I think the first year would be in excess of $4 million. Don't quote me, but that's around the ballpark. So if we're going to spend that, there might be other avenues to.
I believe $7 million of that was for a new kind of dispatch center. Another conversation, of course, is that the fire department wants a brand new headquarters as well. And I think that's regardless of what the 911 answer is. So my thought being, if we might spend it anyway, not saying we will necessarily, are these the sorts of things that we can do? There's also a fire safety sales tax that help. I'm suggesting there are actual resources that we can put on that side of the operation to try to address it. But I understand your point that if we have a lot of delays, it's not something we want to switch tomorrow because fire is not ready, but perhaps it's something that if we come back to that conversation, we talk about it. Because I greatly appreciate the changes you made. The only concern I have is that we're here in 18 months, and and we're like, wow, we talked about this back in 2022. And it seems like right now, to the extent we have some assuredness that we have addressed that, it is that staffing's getting better.
And I will tell you the difference between, I think, in 2021 and 2023, that we weren't looking, I can come up here and say whatever you want to hear. I can make it peachy, but I'm trying to use numbers as a fact. And that's why I gave you the number and you about fell out of your chair. And I did too. I couldn't believe it. I had to verify it. And something was definitely wrong. That's been addressed. So moving forward, again, unless something else changes, no matter where I'm at in the year, come get me and hold me up here. I can pull the numbers real quick, and we can do that. But I truly think if we can maintain the 90%, which is far exceeding what I thought. In fact, we implemented last month a new evaluation program for new trainees, both on the call taking and dispatch side. And that evaluation was supposed to give us a 20% increase because other departments around the nation, in fact, just close independents, had used it. I think they saw 23 or 26% in their increase in their training. We can't see that increase because we're above 90. So, I mean, if that makes sense. And the two that we lost both had nothing to do with their ability. One was a personal matter that they left the department, and the other one, they could do the job. It was an outside issue.
Major Woods, when you use the word success, what does that, in the context of this discussion,
They go through their 5 weeks of classroom training and then 12 weeks of on-the-job floor training, and then we release them to solo status, where they're no longer being monitored. It's kind of like a police officer when they get off break-in. They're in solo status. They can go out and they can do the full duties of a call taker, and we don't have to monitor them, and they're treated just like any other call taker. They're required to work any of the mandatory overtimes, things of that nature.
So all in, it's how many weeks? 17?
It's 5 plus 12. Now, I believe with our new training evaluation that can be reduced, because before it was just a set 5 and then 12. You go by 12. If you were struggling, you would be continued on to you might repeat week 7 twice. So then it would be 13. With the new evaluation from day one, you are evaluated as compared to a fully trained call taker. So if you're doing exceptionally, which we have some that do, it might not take 12 weeks. You might be able to get that done in 10. It's not going to be greatly reduced because it's still going to take time, but there is that ability is like, oh yeah, you got week 1 down in 1 day. Great, we're going to go to week 2.
Thank you. Pardon me. What's the starting annual salary for
Around 40.
call taker and dispatcher?
I got it here, Greg. Our current annual starting salary for call taker is $46,104, and dispatcher is $49,872.
Understood. And then they are paid during those 17 weeks?
They're paid from the first day we hire.
They're in.
And that poses another issue with what you were saying for an outside entity, and we've talked with the college intensively with the chancellor's staff I have. And the business model really doesn't work quite well because, someone goes to them and pays. Well, if they go and get the certification and they come to us, then we have to go through the process. Can they get hired? Well, I was like, look, we can solve that. I can put them through the process prior to get hired, and then they can go there to get trained. But why would you go then at that point when I'll take you and pay you $46,000 a year, full medical, dental, everything, to come work? So when you start looking at that, it makes it more difficult for a 5-week training class. Plus, to get someone there trained to train our people, they'd probably have to take from our staff. So it's not as easy. It's great for a police officer, but you're talking about 1,000 hours of training or 800 hours compared to 5 weeks. It's a little bit different.
I never want to put too many words in your mouth, but I just want to make sure I'm leaving, although you have another idea where it's just not ready for dissemination yet. The answer we have right now is just improve staffing. to address the 911 crisis issue.
That's the major, correct. There's been, I can send you a few pages of everything we've done, because this goes, that's the major thing is right now is staffing, to get bodies in seats to answer the phone. But that goes back to the environment that they work in. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, and how do you address all that? Wellness issues, for instance, the wellness team, they do tremendous amount of work. We have, 1,600 members on the department, but they spend 25 to 30% of their time on communications. That's significant. That tells me there's other things going on. So while we focused on staffing, I can assure you, while that's major, that's a small part of the bigger.
A final question for me in this sequence, although I'm sure to come back with more until we fix it. Auto attendant. Would there ever be a way that if all of our, dispatchers, call takers are busy, that we could then use some sort of service? So rather than people, because I think the biggest thing we're trying to avoid is hold for several minutes that then cascade into more. Because that to me is actually the worst possible solution. The middle solution to me is press 1, press 2. The best is somebody answers the phone. So is there a way that if we're in that terrible area of nobody's answering, the caller's freaking out, happened to my sister, right? My mother was incapacitated on her front lawn, right, for I think 4 minutes. Is there some way that we can get that medium answer of an auto attendant rather than a Kansas City and just waiting?
I believe we could use auto attendant to set it at a time, but I think the more important thing for us is to kind of change the narrative when it comes to education. Because right now, if I go ask a friend or someone on the street, hey, what do you think of 911 in Kansas City? Oh my God, they never answer the phone. Because that's what we've done, unfortunately. And people remember that, and that's why we're getting people saying, hey, I waited 30 minutes or 15 minutes, when it does feel like an eternity, I know, but what we need to tell people is do not hang up. I assure you, we will answer the phone, and it'll be quicker if you don't hang up. That's what we need to teach everybody, not that, hey, it's going to take forever, because on average right now we're at 45 seconds, I believe, and that's an improvement just from a few seconds same time last year. But for May and April of 2023, we're at 60 seconds. This year, we're in the mid-40s. So that number is coming down. 45 seconds is still way too long. 3 minutes is way too long. But I think if we just tell the community, don't hang up, because then you start these other issues that we have to address. We have multiple phone calls, because every call we call back. And we've been automated that process, and hopefully here in a few months we'll have some data for that. It's still fairly new. I'm excited to see what that has done for us. But I think that's the main thing here is to focus on, look, yes, we do have issues in 911. It could take a few minutes during certain time frames. Do not hang up. Stay on the line. We will answer the phone, and it will be quicker than if you hang up. That's my personal opinion about the matter.
On the first part of that question, though, and I hear you, I'm with you on communications, campaigns. That being said, we've been telling people to wear seatbelts for 30 years too, and most of our fatalities still aren't. But you answered on one part. Auto attendant is something that we could look to for folks who do find themselves, and yes, everybody should stay on. Step one, they should still call 911 if there's an emergency and not start driving grandma to the hospital themselves, right? We do want to make sure the public knows that. Right? Step two, right, stay on the line. But is there an opportunity that we can explore where if everybody's busy, something in the system just says, all right, instead of our thank you for calling 911, please don't hang up, which I think is what we say now, instead they can get to that fire, police, or emergency dispatcher that might be necessary.
And I believe we can set up that time, like I said, 2, 3, 4 minutes, but you're just prolonging the same issue you have if we used it the other way, I believe. Because if we're not answering the phone in that 2 or 3 minutes and we send it to auto attendant, all the calls then are going to go, and then you've just delayed what we're worried about happening for 3 minutes. Does that make sense?
I didn't quite follow. So you were saying, because my view, I'll play this. Every person is busy, so there's no one to answer. System switches and says, all right, 911 is just sending you to, frankly, one of the agencies. Now, you're suggesting the problem is that might then inundate them, and we end up in a hold scenario?
Correct, because it all comes down to essentially staffing. So if they're going to get all the calls, let's say at 15 seconds, you send it to auto attendant, so that we don't pick up. It goes to auto attendant. Now fire gets those 10 calls for auto attendant. All we're doing if we're not picking it up in 2 minutes, they're going to still get all those 10 calls and be inundated. We've created the same issue that we believe is going to increase our hold times. We've just prolonged it 2 minutes before we create the issue. Does that?
In essence, we've just transferred the problem perhaps to the fire call taker.
It doesn't matter the time frame you set it. If we're not picking up the phone, it doesn't matter if it's 1 second it takes me to pick up the phone or 5 minutes with the auto attendant. It's going to do the same thing, which the result will result in the exact same thing.
My difference might be that if we have a certain set of people who are answering, and they are in essence the gatekeepers, and we open up the gatekeeping and let the flood come through to the fire call taker. So some people, it will be better, right? The first 4 people who fire can answer will actually get through faster than perhaps the wait might be.
Absolutely. But this is what we forget. The first 4, it helps, but now the next 6 out of the 10, it creates an even longer wait time. So ultimately, our wait times go higher.
And that wait time is because fire won't have the staffing to take it in.
That, and you're right. And then we think it'll cause some bridges back and forth where they're going to hang up now because they've done that, they've hung up. Well, heck, screw this, I'm going to call back. Because if I need police and I don't get a phone call, and we see it all the time, I just looked at something, somebody hung up after 7 seconds, horrible situation. And they're like, okay, if I do the auto attendant, maybe I'll go. Well, I'll just switch over to fire. Okay, they're not answering. Okay, I'm going to call back to police. If I've listened to these calls, I mean, these are people in their worst of times, especially the emergency ones. And I'm not saying it won't help some people. Some people, yes, you're exactly right. 4 people, it would benefit. But overall, I think it would increase the overall call response times.
I mean, I hear you. I mean, I just will go from, and I have people emailing me all the time, but I'll just go with the direct example of my sister. Mom incapacitated on the front lawn. They needed fire, right? Nothing happens. And so, you know, we're blessed, things work out, all of that, but what happens in that interim? And so, yeah, maybe it's 4 people, it's really 4 helpful situations. Now, your point's taken that, you know, how many on the back end, it becomes a math problem at a certain point, right?
It's a Russian roulette problem, really, because your mom could have got help, or maybe your mom goes from not being that 4 and she's number 8, and now that doesn't turn out the same way.
We'll look into that, though. We'll look into that, definitely, into that option. Look
Sorry,
at,
yeah,
like, maybe we can look at a time of what that would be, like the time frame when that would.
That was, and thank you, by the way. This was incredibly helpful, and I appreciate your work on it.
Well, just to that point, Chief, you're still expecting a communication from Mark. They've done a study. There could be other recommendations in addition to staffing, things that we can consider.
Yes. From what I understand, there will be other options that will be absolutely be helpful in a situation where we don't have a dispatcher to answer the call immediately. Yeah, I look forward to that.
And we can do to make that happen sooner rather than
It's already
later?
on my calendar.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Remind Mark that we are a very strong contributor to them each year.
I will do
I won't
that.
get in budget fights there too, but it does matter a lot to us, as you know. So,
I'll let them know that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Major Williams. Chief Office, Executive Officer, Deputy Chief Young. Okay. Office of General Counsel.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have 2 action items for you, and they're under tab E of your board book. The first is Nicole M. Mice's appeal of the private officer's licensing unit's denial of her application for an unarmed private security license. The Lenexa Police Department terminated Mice from employment in June 2024 for posting images on Snapchat that were described as poor decision-making. On July 31st, 2024, MICE applied for an unarmed private security license. On August 12th, 2024, the Private Officer Licensing Unit denied MICE's application pursuant to the Code of State Regulations 17 CSR 10-2.050-30, which states that an individual terminated from a law enforcement agency is ineligible for a private security license. On August 19th, 2024, MICE appealed this decision. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, the Private Officers Licensing Unit recommends upholding the denial of this license.
I move approval. Support that.
Any questions?
Move. My motion is to approve the recommendation to uphold the denial.
Any questions?
Who seconded? Your motion's to approve their recommendation of denial?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I'll second. I will note in comments, though, because it seems that there's a state code provision that governs it. While perhaps unfortunate, I do think we have to go with what the law would suggest.
All in favor?
Thank you. The second action item I have is Ethan J. Salinas' appeal of the Private Officer Licensing Unit's denial of his application for an unarmed private security license. In July 2024, Salinas resigned from the Lenexa Police Department in lieu of termination after he failed to follow a directive to not speak about an incident with another employee. On July 23, 2024, Salinas applied for an unarmed private security license. On July 25, 2024, the Private Officers Licensing Unit denied Salinas' application pursuant to the Code of State Regulations 17 CSR 10-2.050-30, which states that an individual who resigns from a law enforcement agency in lieu of termination is ineligible for a private security license. On August 22nd, 2024, Salinas appealed this decision. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, the Private Officer Licensing Unit recommends upholding the denial of this application.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the upholding?
I move approval of the upholding, of the denial, the recommendation for denial.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's been approved.
Thank you.
Okay. Office of Community Complaints? Okay, thank you. Public comments?
Yes, we have a number. First, Fred Gambino, and everyone will have 2 minutes.
Thank you for hearing me. I appeared here about 18 months ago. I live in Brookside. We were victims of a serious crime wave back then. The police were very helpful to come out, make suggestions to us. We put burglar alarms around our building. Recently, we have been the victim of the continuing crime wave. We had our alarm brought into central alarm, and the police were, because they were too busy, unable to respond. I go to my CVS, the front door is smashed in because they attempted to get the ATM. I eat at Brady and Fox, and the chef who runs it has been murdered at 5 o'clock. I have gone into my parking lot, and in that same parking lot, fellow residents have been showed a gun by a young person who told them to move on, and then they fired shots in the air. And we did not get a call back then. I don't fault the Kansas City Police Department. Every member of the Kansas City Police Department that I've had any dealings with have had the highest of integrity and enthusiasm and determination to help me. But I was recently at a Brookside Chamber of Commerce community meeting in which Major Barnes brought 8 officers, including one of your major juvenile delinquency officers and other officers. But what I was told is that you're down 300 to 400 personnel. You don't have the officers. And in the last year, you've gained 2. In other words, there is no immediate prospect of you having enough police officers to respond to our calls. And when the mayor and the chief tell me that we're going to work around to try and give more presence on your streets there in Brookside in that area, as to the rest of the board, I don't know where you all live in Kansas City, but I'd be a little concerned if there are going to be more police officers in Brookside, then where are they going to come from? You have to solve the staffing problem immediately. You also, and I'm a former Illinois assistant state's attorney who ran a juvenile division in the 70s, and I think the chief was right to criticize the revolving door in the family court system here and to demand more accountability. Because when you have to arrest the same juveniles over and over again, and you have to understand that they are simply in a training program for violent crime. I had a neighbor who was photographing young kids pulling doors open. And when she got her camera out and said, "I've seen you," they laugh at her. And she's a 75-year-old woman who had the courage to film somebody. The kids know that there's no accountability. It seems to me that the only thing you can do right now is to follow the lead of the Missouri governor, your boss, the person who appointed you. He looked at the fentanyl problem and he said, we have a crisis here in Kansas City or in all of Missouri. So I'm sending 200 Missouri National Guard to the Texas border for a month and 22 highway patrolmen. Now, I don't know if they were successful.
Sir, we might, there were 2 minutes. We love hearing from, I think you're past time, unfortunately.
All right.
Thank you, though.
I urge you to call the governor and ask for Missouri National Guard and Highway Patrol to supplement your police force until you can hire our way out of this crime wave.
Next is Marisa Banks.
We would like to remind everybody of the 2 minutes again. Thank you.
Hello, I am Marisa Banks. I live on the west side crossroad areas where we have been affected tremendously over and over and over and over and over again till we speak to this day. I am tired. I am wanting questions. I am wanting to know, what are we up against? Is this a gang? Is this a ring? What is this? And how long is this going to take? So I only got 1 minute, so I'm trying to figure out what can we do as a community? How do we keep ourselves safe? I am in awe. I thank God for the police. Like, again, he said that they have been terrific on coming to me, giving me things to work on, things to do, what to look out for, giving me answers, staying in communication. They're doing their job. I see the understaffing. I see that is a problem. It's happening all across the board to where I don't even know where you guys can begin, because it is 1 minute they're at Brookside, the next minute they're at my home. And again, we are affected at a rate to where we're scratching our heads. And mind you, I am a legal gun owner at the same time. So I have a special needs daughter that I have to protect, and I am in protective mode at this moment. I'm asking you guys to figure this out ASAP. Because when I say this is ongoing, something is going to happen. People are tired. These are kids. They're not going to run me out of my city. I'm not moving. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not scared of these kids. We need answers. That's all I'm saying. Give us answers so the community will know what to do. I've talked to the West Side. The West Side is well aware. I'm going to make sure that some of those people are here the next time at the meeting because they have a lot to say. They're scratching their heads too. Everybody is being affected. So again, I want to thank everybody and let them know that we are standing with everyone, but we just want to know what the solution and when is the time frame of this. This is wider than what we think and deeper than what we think. So I'm just one that refuses to be a victim. I want to find solutions, and I want to work with everyone to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Gray. Jill Cuxon.
Hello, thanks for hearing me. I'm also a small business owner, 2 in the Crossroads. I'm an owner-partner of 4, soon to be 5 small businesses. Resident of the Crossroads, we've experienced all of the same broken record. Police, you do a great job. You know, you're understaffed. I can't imagine what you're up against. I'm here to make a public comment, an observation, if you will. I find it very curious when I look at the boards that our governor appoints, that often there is a presence of people on those boards who have respective experience in the industry that they are governing. And I am just very curious, and I want to point out to the public that we have a board of people. You seem you're all very intelligent, accomplished. I read your bios. You know, I believe that you're caring. I am curious about why there's not a single member of the board that has experience in law enforcement. That blows my mind, because I feel what's the real root of this problem is the bureaucracy that gets created. You know, Q, you asked some great questions, and because you don't know. I mean, the bureaucracy that gets created naturally by a board of people having to report to, a group of people having to report to a board that has no experience in their industry is wheels spinning. I mean, it's clearly a disaster. And I urge, I'm only here today to urge the community to contact Governor Parsons and ask him. Other boards are populated by people who have competent experience in the respective industry. This one doesn't. And I don't understand that. And I'm here to inquire and want to understand that. I mean, it's not a matter of intelligence. You know, I consider myself to be an intelligent human being. I am not qualified to do that job. I would very much urge people to not only contact Governor Parsons and ask him why there is not a single person on our police commissioner board with law enforcement experience, and I would also encourage you to vote him out. Cheers.
Doug Winter.
Thank you for having me or letting me speak. Thank you, Chief Graves. You've been very responsive, and thank you, Mayor, for asking the hard questions. I'm not sure you got the answers we're looking for, but at least you're asking them. I am here with compassion and respect for the officers that are doing the work of 2. I'm fully aware that KCPD is severely understaffed. Everybody is. I don't fault the police department in any way. Crime in the Crossroads is an emergency and needs to be addressed at the highest level. Recently, local business owners and representatives of KCPD held a meeting at Parlor with the desire to discuss solutions to the issues. I'm the vice president of operations of the company that owns and operates Parlor. We did present a few ideas, and we were told that the PD was already doing most of them. We spoke about deployment, priorities, leveraging activity, and staff. We all left that meeting with less confidence than we had previously. That is not the officers' fault. They did a great job in defining reality for us. We were informed that KCPD has a prioritization policy that has been in place for 35 years and is reviewed every 4 years. We were told not to stop calling in crimes no matter how long or if they are even able to respond at all. The police department deploys the most assets where there is the most crime. If we do not report the crimes, the police department will think there is less crime. We were told to be a good witness and be an advocate with the prosecutor's office regarding our cases. We were told the department is short-staffed by over 300 officers, and it will be 10 years before they are staffed. We were told here today it's 128 officers. I think that's more of a budgetary matter. I think we're budgeted for another 120 officers, but we're 300 short. 2 people have been told. Please bear with me. We were told it would be a good idea to hire a private security company that is having a positive effect at the plaza. Not sure where that money is going to come from. We were told that the KCPD receives between 70 and 100 property cases a week. We were told to add lights, add cameras, have lights and cameras. The perpetrators are committing these crimes in broad daylight. My car was broken into at 2 p.m. Since I was here last, Parlor is down an additional $75,000. That is $575,000 this year. Lost business. I'm aware of 12 more break-ins experienced by Parlor and team members and our guests of the Crossroads. That is 12 guests that will not be back to Parlor. They will tell 12 others. It is team members that will take their talent elsewhere. Those 12 individuals just will not be back. I'm not sure you understand the magnitude of the situation. However, the problem is much larger than Parlor or the other local businesses impacted. The night before the meeting, a local chef was shot and killed attempting to stop a car theft. We were told not to get involved. It's just a car. To us, it's much more than a car. It is a guest that will never return. It is transportation to and from work. It is a team member that will go elsewhere. It is our livelihood, and soon Crossroads will be empty. I heard an officer speak about the World Cup and how great it's going to be for the businesses. We're not going to be here in 2 years. I guarantee you that. We can't afford it. This is an emergency. The situation needs to be an event, not a process. I'm asking that the governor hire a private security company until the time when KCPD is staffed and protect its businesses and citizens. I'm asking that the governor enlist the National Guard. Doing the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. I'm asking that each of you think outside the box and come up with a creative solution to help KCPD. You must act swiftly. It will take quite some time to change the people's perception regarding Crossroads. It will take a significant investment in a PR plan to get people back. You first need to make it a safe and desirable place to be. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ron Hunt.
Thank you. I think our police department is doing great. I appreciate Chief Graves and her department and what they've been doing on 31st and Prospect. I'm going to make a suggestion. I think that we could call the sheriff's department, Forte's department. They're busy, but they're not as busy as the police department. Number 3, juvenile crimes. Juveniles, I've worked with juveniles for the last 20 years. I visited Teresa Berg over there at the family court, and we had a shooting. I can't think of what city it was in. 14-year-old boy shot some people. One of the greatest things that they did was arrested that boy's parents. If we can start arresting their parents, because see, this is what happens. Kids commit these adult crimes, the family's hurt, community's hurt, and the kid goes to a juvenile facility and we stick a bottle back in their mouth. That's unacceptable. I think when kids get arrested, the parents should be investigated, possibly arrested too. Parents got to be held responsible. Those are your kids. Those are your kids out there killing. I was going past Price Choppers about 5:15, just shortly after that man was killed. Shortly after that man, I was going to get some groceries for my daughter. To say all that to say, we got to get harder on those juveniles. They're going to keep committing crimes. My daughter's mother was violated about 3 or 4 times, and days in a row. I mean, I said, you got to be a victim. See, if you're not a victim, the punch is not going to hurt as much. Being a victim, then when you're a victim, then people are going to start fighting back, Chief. People are going to start shooting these people. Man out in Lee Summit shot an individual coming in their house. I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating we got to fight back to some degree. There has to be something's got to give. These people are being polarized. I'm glad it doesn't happen on where I live at, because I got cameras everywhere and got dogs everywhere, but I think that if we can target that juvenile justice center and arrest those parents, ask those parents, there's no way in heck that a 15 and 14-year-old should be carrying an AR-15. There's no way. Where can they get the gun from? So I'm not going to sit up here and ramble. Everybody said this about the same thing, but, you know, it's hard to turn away when you're a victim of a crime. People are going to start shooting back. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Kevin Klinkenberg. I don't see him. That's all.
Okay, well, we would like to thank everybody for your public comments today. I know this is a very tough time, and we are looking at all of our options and expediting this.
That's it.
Approval of minutes, that was it? Okay. Approval of the open session minutes for the August 20th, 24 meeting.
So move.
Second.
Roll call, aye? All in favor, say aye.
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 Minutes have been approved.
Nothing at this time.
Mayor?
Thank you, President Kramer, and you reminded me earlier, we've been together here for 3 years. I hate to be Pollyannish right after we hear the gravity, but things have gotten better in terms of this department's connection with this community. A lot of the numbers that we're seeing are going in the direction we need, but we recognize from everyone that it's not enough. I want to commend a few people, frankly, for comments today. First of all, Major Williams knows my passion on this issue, and he did an exceptional job. I would put you up against any city department director or anything of that sort who explains to us road resurfacing, fire safety, anything under the sun, and recognizing the challenges, working on the solutions, and frankly, engaging with, I think, many of the opportunities we might have to fix it. I left our conversation, I hope everyone in the public left the conversation knowing that this department has an interest in fixing the problem. And no matter what people say, all of us are trying to. We may have different ways to do it. We may want to be crazier on ideas, but I really appreciate that, and I thank you. I also want to recognize somebody I've gotten to visit with a lot over the years, but Deputy Chief Niemeyer. The chief mentioned it earlier too, but when you didn't cut me off, you were very respectful when you said, look, I'm not here for excuses. And you just said, we're going to get it done. Be that property crimes, homicides, anything under the sun. And I think from what I heard from everyone in our public comments, what we hear from everyone each day is they just want us to get it done. There are real challenges in literally everything, but everybody's got challenges in their lives too. And I appreciate you noting that. A few things that I wanted to mention for the board today, and I thank you all for the indulgence. As Mr. Kenner can tell you, we used to go longer and have a lot more drama in all these conversations. And so thank you for letting us get into some good questions, but in still positive conversation. Something on the city side of what we need to address and what has been an issue for years is detention itself. They can go through a lot of backgrounds as to why there isn't a city detention facility, why we have other solutions, all types of things. but we don't have the solutions we need now. This Thursday, for the board's interest, I'm introducing an ordinance that would appropriate $16 million. Major Heinen will be upset because it's from the public safety sales tax, unrestricted fund balance, but that will allow us to restore the 8th floor of this building for a detention facility. That would hold 144 persons. 55 of those spaces would be for overnight beds. The other remainder, I guess that's 89, would be for persons that would be in booking processes, but between 0 and 24 hours. The 55 beds per different detention standards would be for persons between 0 and 72 hours that they're spending with the Kansas City Police Department and the people of Kansas City. In addition to that, as the chief noted in her comments, conversations are ongoing at City Council to build a detention facility. I think Councilman Rea has shared it in the past. That would be at least 250 beds. There's still debate there. I'm not going to get ahead of my skis and say what will be resolved. But 250 beds, that's a much more expensive facility. We don't have a number on that entirely, but 250 beds. There's also been an agreement with University Health for 25 involuntary mental health beds in the new state-funded hospital. Actually, on that one, thank you, Governor Parson, and the Missouri legislature. That would allow us to have folks who have unique issues that should be separated from incarceration more broadly. Currently, and I know Captain Martinez is probably the best expert here, but if you talk to our detention folks or others, you know, we've got some people sometimes who have serious issues, such that our county partners, and I think Vernon County and Johnson County, Missouri, say we won't deal with this person. I won't get into the details. You can imagine all the things they do. Hopefully, particularly those 25 beds, get us to a position where we can actually start to address issues. If you do the math and add up all of those, that would be 144 on the 8th floor, plus 250 and a longer-term lockup, plus 25, gets you to about 419. That is up from, in essence, 0 today, but with respect to Metro Patrol, you can tell me how many we have there. I think that could be a strong and important change, and it has the city stepping up and saying, this is a step we'll do. I know there will be some who say, why the 8th floor first? Will this detract us from the 250 and all of that? I want to get things done, kind of like Deputy Chief Niemeyer was saying. We need answers, and we need answers now. That is not a full answer, but at least it gets us somewhere. My hope and the direction that I'll make to the city manager is that we try to start construction at the beginning of 2025, that we try to facilitate that construction to be as quickly as possible. But I hear you, Chief. We have that construction done prior to the 2026 World Cup. That puts us on a less than 18-month window. I've seen things get faster. I've seen giant bridges get fixed in Baltimore and all types of other places. I know that Tom would say there are ways we can get things done quickly. But my hope is that at least we can do that part. That then moves us, and I would hope, by the way, that this passes within the next week to 2 weeks. That then allows us to go back to the conversation on the bigger jail. That involves Jackson County and the land. That involves more. That's not saying we won't get it done. That's just saying I recognize more political challenges. But I hope to something you've said a lot, Madam Chair, we make sure that there are consequences for people. And what I don't think we can keep saying, and I think we can't say this out to the public or our officers, is that nothing happens. The chief and I had a good, healthy conversation on are people arrested, are they not, where they go, and all of that. I hope everyone who commits a crime that merits an arrest gets arrested and gets transported somewhere. That being said, on the city side, we need to do our part and make sure they have somewhere to go. I hope, Madam Chair, that this is at least a step one in doing that. One other point, and by the way, I welcome your advocacy with the City Council as well. I do think that the odds are that we're able to pass this. I usually try to introduce things that will get passed, but I'll call you if we're starting to have some issues. The other thing that I think I heard today, and I appreciated Major Williams, and I really appreciated Deputy Chief Niemeyer, the analyst discussion. I think we're hearing from you all as well, we have to be as creative as possible and innovative. There are some who would talk about reimagining policing, whatever exactly that means. I don't think that you can have any conversation about how you implement changes in policing without talking to police. And I would hope that the conversations, the type of which we had today, what are analysts' role, how does technology help, all of that really kind of start from KCPD, is a model not just for Kansas City in the future, but how we do things ahead. There is a big debate, unfortunately, at City Council on a public safety sales tax and how much it should be and where it should be spent and all of that. The only thing that I think I would say to my colleagues, and I'll share this with them when I'm back at City Council, if we're looking to spend $350 million on who knows what to prevent violent crime, I would hope that that's something where we have conversations like we just had, or Major Williams and I had, where maybe we came from different places, but at least you see where we're getting somewhere. And I think that's important on how we solve these crimes long term. I'll make a final point because these things do matter to me. You know, since I've been mayor, probably more than 600 people in this city have lost their life to homicide, some of which we remember. And my second day as mayor, we had a young woman who was shot. You call those stray bullets, even though I don't necessarily see them as stray, in the Crossroads area. And we all got together and we all said, we got to do something. And that was a very young defendant, by the way, 18 years old. It pains me greatly that we still have teenagers that are involved in this type of activity, often teenagers who have been involved in activity for some time. And so I'm not saying we're going to shirk our responsibility to get 911 calls answered, build a detention center, hire enough officers to do it. We're everybody here, for people watching, we're all going to do our job. There's a bigger challenge in this community with what's happening. I'm good with our teenagers. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Ed Elders.
I don't have any comments.
Commissioner Madeline Romius.
No comments.
Commissioner Tom Whitaker.
I'll be really brief because we're running over. I want to recognize and thank all the people that show up to these meetings from the public to provide comments. And I also thank those who can't be here and email us the comments or reach out to us. And it's not always easy to hear those and receive those. And I reflect on something that we've talked about many times. These are difficult issues, but there are many issues, and I don't think there will ever be any one solution that we can turn to. It is always complicated, and there will be multiple things that we need to consider. And it's, the mayor stole a little bit of what I wanted to say, but I'll reiterate it very quickly, and that is, it just seems somewhat insincere sometimes to talk about the great progress that we are really making when we still have so many issues, but I don't think we can ever lose sight of the progress that we're making because that does illustrate how hard this department is working, how the community is coming together to help us, and it's worth repeating. So I thank those that bring us those issues, and I thank everyone that's helping face this and try and make continued progress. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And again, along Commissioner Whitaker's lines and the mayor, we do want to see consequences and changes. And I know before I took this position, I met with the mayor. He called me into his office and wanted to know, you know, what my intentions were. And from the get-go, I've said, we need a jail. We need a jail, and I'm going to be that squeaky wheel. And we need to hold these kids accountable and the parents. And they need to realize that there are consequences for their actions. And that's where we as a community work together to hold them accountable, to hold our, you know, juvenile system, whether we need to get those laws changed, but to expedite whatever needs to happen so this does happen. And I know our officers are frustrated with, you know, hours and hours of time to get these, you know, crimes prosecuted, to then see them released. And I know that's very frustrating, and we do feel that as well. And, you know, as we all come together as a community and voice these things, it will change and we will make progress. So we need to focus on now this being a safer city and all playing our parts. And for all of the community who knows somebody who wants to make a difference, please, we need officers. We are 300 short. We would love to have you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for what you do, putting your neck on the line, working endless hours to keep our city safe. And Chief, you've done an outstanding job, and I know you're there constantly listening. We have great communication with this board, with our chief, with our deputy officers, and we are working very hard to make a difference. So I just want to thank everybody personally. And with that being said, motion to go into closed. Motion to go into closed.
Move to adjourn and go into close.
Is there a second?
Second?
Oh, Elder.
Whitaker, aye.
Kramer, aye.
Romeus, aye.
Are you on the fence?
Well, I can. I
You
think.
can or can't?
I can, yes.
Can.